the political capital to get involved as well, right? So there is an element of hedging here where the United States has the ability to say, okay, we'll shoot down some missiles from our destroyers and our frigates that are off the coast. We have the ability to strike with Tomahawk missiles if needs be. We have the ability to launch planes off the deck of the carrier to increase that amount, especially if Hezbollah crosses the border. Hezbollah crosses the border, the United States Navy is going to absolutely destroy every single piece of Hezbollah equipment it possibly can. Once they cross that line, it's game over. The last part that I want to emphasize here is what you mentioned in regards to Wagner. Wagner is clearly in South Lebanon right now to assist in anti-air, anti-missile defense, meaning that if there are air assets that are airborne, Wagner is there to provide some sort of consultation to the actual operators of the equipment of how to use it and use it properly and to maximize its effect, right? That's what they're there for. Now, does that draw the United States in? No, because technically Wagner is not Russia. Technically speaking, it is not the Russian government. So the United States still has to, I don't want to say keep its powder dry, but it can still limit, because I have to remind people, and this is the last thing I'll say, you have to remember that if you have one side that says we're not here to escalate, we're only here to defend Israel, and the other side is we're gonna escalate this as much as possible, and we don't care. We're gonna blow past all of your red lines. You can't control that. If you have a fanatical group like Hezbollah that is absolutely determined to escalate this war, the United States and Israel can do nothing to stop them. All it can do is control its response to that desire for escalation to keep it within that threshold. Again, the political box is checked, the military box is checked. The regional box is something the United States is not trying to get put into. It does not want to get put into the regional box. It only wants this to be Israel, which is why you don't see these large strikes all over Syria, all over Lebanon and Iraq. You're not seeing a huge operation going on. You're seeing direct responses to direct attacks, so it doesn't get drawn into that regional political problem. So I think that we have to remember, if one side is determined to escalate, you can't control that. All you can control is your reaction to that.
Craig, I have a question for you regarding this point. So, what do you think about the article that was released, actually the secret report from Israeli Minister of Intelligence, suggesting that Israel plans to occupy Gaza and expel its 2.3 million citizens to Egypt's Sinai? Is that something that you have heard about or read about? And what do you think about this?
I'll be very quick in this response. Number one, the humanitarian corridor is not going to happen until Israel has sealed off from the Gaza border to the Mediterranean Sea. That's not going to happen, right? So Israel, you see that southern axis of attack that is coming in from the south. It is trying to create essentially another border, right? Another filtration system. So as it comes up to meet the Mediterranean, it's then going to squeeze Gaza City down, but it has to establish that southern quote unquote exit route first. Once it does that and people want to get out, Israel is now in control of that, essentially that artificial border that it has created, right? They're going to have to go through Israeli troops. They're going to have to go through Israeli checkpoints. They're going to have to go through Israeli this and Israeli that. And so that's why they're creating it. In terms of expelling a population, number one, logistically, that's impossible. You can't do that. You can't expel 2.1 million people from a geographical area, given the armed forces that exist right now for Israel in the operational, what you might consider the operational area of operations, right, if you will, right? You can't do that. You logistically do not have to, because you also have ongoing combat operations. So if this is Israel squeezes down.
I'm sorry, but I don't understand how isn't it logistically doable, while we are reading a lot of reports that Israel is actually pressuring Europe so that it puts more pressure on Egypt so that they accept more refugees in the future. So how's that not possible?
So again, Israel has control of its own destiny, right? It has control of its fate, it has control of its decision-making process, but it's limited by the abilities that exist on the ground. Logistically speaking, sorry, but just 2 seconds. Logistically speaking, this is what I mean. You cannot take a population of 2.1 million people and adhere to the laws of war, which Israel does. Israel adheres to the laws of war, right? Or the laws of armed conflict, if you want me to be technical. And if you can't adhere to the laws of armed conflict, first of all, deporting people from a geographic area is considered genocide, right? So that's number one. And then number two, if they do that, you're violating that laws of what is that considered? Laws of armed conflict, right?
I
So
have a
that's
question. Did you just say that Israel is adhering to the laws of war?
I
They
have
are.
I have not seen anything to prove otherwise.
Okay,
Yeah, and I
that's
just
a big question mark to me. Ben, do you believe that Israel is actually adhering to the laws of war?
yes, absolutely. The laws of war and what people term the Geneva Convention and humanitarian laws, they're all different. But yes, as far as what I've seen, and the Colonel, you have a Colonel in the room, you have U.S. military people, Colonel Spencer's down there. From what I've seen, what I've heard, I haven't heard any military analyst say that Israel is not adhering to the laws of war. I do think that they are. Now, I just want to make crystal clear. So this notion of expelling the population of Gaza into the Sinai is absurd. That's just not going to happen for a lot of reasons. Number one, it's not right, clearly. Number two is it would be the end probably of the Egyptian and Israeli peace treaty, potentially the peace treaty with Jordan, although I don't know. I
Ben,
can't speak.
if I just
Yeah,
want to
go
look
ahead there.
at
Sure.
one point from the laws of war, which is proportionality, do you believe that
Yes,
is being
absolutely.
applicable currently? If we want to look at the casualties from both sides, is proportionality being applicable as the first law of war?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to underline something. Genocide is not just about the killing of people, it is about the deportation or the ethnic cleansing of a people from a geographic area. That is also considered genocide, and it is also considered a violation of the laws of armed conflict. And if Israel was to do that, first forget about the operational component.
Guys, everyone, pause for a sec. Please, can you explain to me what that means? So the Intel crab, which we follow, and he's generally a good source. I'm sure other people here follow the Intel crab. So I want to understand what that mean. What that. So what can you just tell me what that means? I just want to see if this is fear mongering or means anything. So there's a tweet. I'm going to pin it at the top. And then he just says breaking Skynet activated doom imminent. Is that just messing around?
Yeah, I think I saw this earlier, Mario. I think he's referring to some of the other like OSINT people that are like making a big deal out of all this air traffic over the United States. They're trying to say that there's like way more military air traffic than normal right now. I don't even think that's true. And on top of that, it doesn't look like the person that's coming from is
Mike,
actually
Michael, it's standard flights, it's training activities. I
right,
mean, just it's
right,
stuff flying every day. The
right,
E6 is up, going from one place to another. These guys got to get their
right.
flight hours. If you're watching it in the conga line going overseas, that's a different story. But
Right.
over the United States, they're up every day. I mean, the C-17s were going up to Maine because Biden's going to Maine the end of the week. So
Can
I
you
mean,
guys guys let me just 2 seconds. Sorry, Michael, just quickly, and I've invited John. If you can give us just quick insight on this one. So because that is just important, because during now there's just a lot of fear around a lot of things, and things like this could get a lot of traction and get people scared for no reason. So the Intel Grab, as far as I know, is a good source. I could be wrong, but from memory, this is a source that's used, one of the Austin accounts. Michael, you know them, yeah? Intel Crab.
Yeah, they've Intel Crab, Intel Doge, some of those other accounts have been good. My reading of what he's saying is he's making fun of that tweet. Like he's being sarcastic is how I'm reading it.
Yeah, this makes more sense, because are you scared? Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I think he's joking. And again, it's difficult in a time of crisis, right? Sometimes it's hard to tell if people are being sarcastic or they're poking fun at someone or whatever. But my having, I've followed him for a while. I've seen, his other stuff. I'm pretty sure that he's being sarcastic. He's being a little bit mocking of the person that's posting this other stuff.
Yeah.
And there's no B-52s up either. So, our big bombers aren't up. So
yeah, I'm just looking at I'm looking at the original tweet he's quote tweeted. I don't see anything that makes sense there. There's not much data.
Right.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Right. You can't just take a screenshot
of
Flight
it doesn't
Radar
make sense.
and be like, yeah. No, I think I think Intel Crab's great. I think he's probably making fun of.
Yeah, because the reason it got me it just came up. So what we do is we have a team, pretty big team, that looks at all these accounts, all these different sources. I look at 200-300 sources.
What is Skynet anyway? I've never heard of that. Is that a real thing, Skynet?
What's what?
It was a great movie in Terminator.
Yeah, that's what I
it.
thought.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't even
No,
think it's not even
Intel
real.
Crab. So Intel Crab he was famous because he was the first person on Twitter to post the Russian army crossing the Crimean border, that security camera footage. He kind of rocketed to fame because he was the first person that got that footage of the Russians rushing the border in Crimea.
Yeah. So just back to the point. So we have a team of pretty big team that looks at a couple of hundred sources and puts the news in a group that we're all in. Some of you on the panel are in that group and help us share news. And it just comes up. So the Intel Crab is one of those sources, and it just came up on me like Skynet activate. And I don't know what the hell Skynet is other than the movie. And then it came up from Intel Crab, which is a source I trust. I didn't know he's being sarcastic, obviously, because I didn't see the context of it. So, I'm glad you offered that clarity, Michael. I want to go back to because my team is sending it. They're trying to figure out what he's talking about. He's not, also in a counselor, not usually sarcastic, and especially not times like this. So that kind of caught us by surprise. But just going back to the discussion, I don't know where we're at, but the question that I asked earlier, and since the Veripass and Colonel Jeff, I do want to go back to what happens if we do have an all-out war between Iran's proxies and Hezbollah. Obviously, Lebanon is the infrastructure screwed for an economy that's already destroyed. I don't know what's left in Syria that are going to be destroyed, but Syria is going to take a hit, assuming all the proxies are in. So this is a pretty serious escalation. Now, the question would be is Iran going to join? So let me go back to my news, to my agenda, because there's so many things that happened since the space started that we haven't even gone through the things that happened in the last 48 hours. So we have Lebanese schools are closed for tomorrow out of fear of a war. They called it sudden security development. Obviously, we have a speech tomorrow.
Discussing the secret report that was.
The Sinai. Yeah, you can go back. We'll get back to that in a bit. I just want to, I think this is imminent. Like, we're talking about a speech that's going to happen in 12 hours and 7 minutes. So I just want to focus a bit more on that one. Then we'll go back to the Sinai one, because I've wanted to discuss it for a few days. We obviously got so there's a statement here. I don't know where it came from, but it came on a Markor Rishon Hebrew newspaper that said deployment of U.S. carriers and Marines insufficient as deterrent to access resistance parties, Iran, Hezbollah, Houthis, etc., or the proxies. So saying it's just insufficient. Yeah. We also have a statement here.
I get what everybody's saying, but people have to remember that war is two-sided, right? The other side gets a vote, and if the other side is not incentivized, forget deterrence, right? Forget about Hezbollah is worried it's going to lose its fighters, and Hezbollah is worried it's going to lose its rocket sites. Hezbollah doesn't care. It's a death cult, right? So it doesn't care about losing people. That's not the point. The point is to box the United States into a political decision to militarily get involved. And the United States has its own agency to say, you know what, that's not enough for us. So the United States and Israel cannot deter a death cult from being involved because they're not incentivized to, because of their political mentality of destroying the state of Israel. People have to get past this idea that the United States can somehow deter a non-state terrorist actor from acting. You can't do that. All you can do is simply control your reaction to their behavior. That's all you can do. This is not a nation state like Iran that has political leadership and it has isolated groups of this. These people do not care. It's like saying, well, we could have deterred the Taliban, or we could have deterred Al Qaeda. These people are not interested in.
What do you mean you don't care? Hold on. You can't say they're not. You can't.
Are you muted?
Yeah, he dropped out again. Sorry.
Yeah. So you can't talk about no deterrence. They're still strategic entities. Is terrorist organization or not, putting those labels. Like, for me, at the end of the day, they're strategic. They're gonna make the right decision based on the various incentives, the various, whether they're a proxy or how much influence they have, etc. But so I think deterrence does exist. Like, you talk of Hezbollah, hey, we've got our biggest warship right next to your door, as well as the Eisenhower. We've got the Ford and the Eisenhower right next to you guys. We've got all these missile defense systems around you.
And we've
got Israel going out. Go ahead. And then I want to go to and just quickly, Hoshiyar, I want to go to you. Hoshiyar, I'm going to pin a tweet at the top, Hoshiyar. I want you to read it because I want to ask you about it as well, and I'll read it for the audience in the meantime. Go ahead, Craig. Yeah, go ahead. Take your time. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hamas entered Israel and slaughtered 1,400 people. It was then swiftly surrounded by an army of somewhere between 200 to 250,000 people, right? They were not deterred by Israel's military might. They were not deterred by 250,000 combat troops on their border and now crossing into
or Craig, let's go a bit back and forth. Or it got out of control and it surprised everybody, or they were influenced by in Iran. They're like, hey, sign your own death warrants since we supply with weapons. Zev, hold on. You even in the early days, you even said it's a
I didn't
possibility
say
got out of
anything.
control.
Did I say anything? I didn't say anything. I'll just wait. Go ahead, Mario.
Okay. And the other one is Iran forcing them to sign that death warrant.
Yes.
Iran telling them, guys, we need you to do this because we need to jeopardize. We're not happy with the deal that Saudi's doing
Remember two groups. Understand Hamas is the little brother of Hezbollah. Okay, I know I've had the mic for a while, so I'll shut up in a second. Hamas is the little brother to Hezbollah, but their mentality is still the same. There are 250,000 combat troops, Israeli combat troops, that are on their border now entering Gaza Strip. That did not deter them from fighting on. That's not forcing them to surrender. That's not all that's going to say is they're going to say, bring it on. We don't care.
Just
if we all
a
die
little bit
because
of
we're
breaking
martyring.
news. A little bit of breaking news, Mario. I don't
shit.
mean to interrupt, but
Just go
the
ahead.
U.S. House of Representatives just passed the $14.3 billion emergency aid bill for Israel with 214 Republican votes and 12 Democratic votes for a
Does
total.
Does that include Ukraine?
No, it was severed.
No, that's the independent bill, but it passed 226 to 196, which means that the Senate will have the opportunity, if they choose, to take up the Israel-only bill, or if the Senate doesn't concur with that, they can try to send it back to the House, and we could have this continued back and forth over whether or not they should be put together.
Mike, you forget about one thing, that you can mark up the bill. So the bill that's sent to the Senate, they can have a conference, right? So everybody understands how legislation works, right? How the sausage is made. The House sends a bill to the Senate rejects it. They then form a conference, and then they find a way to add different stuff in. So that's it.
Right. The point is just that the Senate and the House may go back and forth over still trying to get the Ukraine, bit of this kind of thrown in there. And I don't know how that's going to be. In fact, I'm curious for Ben's thoughts too, but I think there will be a little bit more pressure on the Democrats now to go ahead and just get this through the Senate, because the House was able to somehow agree on something for 5 minutes, and they put this up and it's all ready to go. And so if the Senate, looks like they're stalling, it actually could backfire on the Democrats, and then vis-a-vis, the president. So I think that, the Senate probably should take this up in good faith, but we'll see what happens.
I agree. I mean, go ahead, Mario.
No, just it's just overwhelming. There's too many things happening. So I wanna ask you. Let me go to Hoshiar's point. Before that, we have this bill. So what does that mean for the Ukraine war, Michael?
Well, look,
it's like we're forgetting the war, the biggest war in Europe since World War II.
Right, and so I think in the in the immediate term, there were some reports from Axios and others that maybe this will mean a few less Patriot missile systems for Ukraine, like in the next couple of months. But overall, it's not going to impact the U.S.'s support to Ukraine, because you got to remember, Mario, that the way the House went about this is they said, we're going to take this issue aside for Israel first, and then there's another $64 billion that they want to do for Ukraine. There's a few billion they want to do for the border, and then there's another few billion that they want to do for Taiwan. So as far as the U.S. continuing to provide all this support, they're going to just pass them as separate bills, and so I don't think there's any concern there. But if you're asking in the smallest little way, it's not going to have any impact on the actual conflict in either way. But yeah, a couple of Patriot systems that may have gone to Ukraine are probably going to go to Israel, and then some more 155 millimeter ammo and stuff like that is probably going to go to Israel first, and then they'll circle back to Ukraine.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, though, right? I don't think we can take away from the internal U.S. politics, because I do think it has a broader implication. So what you're seeing now is, okay, the House is one thing, right? But you're seeing Republicans unite, even though there's only a few Democrats that voted for it, and Biden has to take that in his consideration. I'd like to bring up actually a political expert that's been DMing me, but to talk about this, because I think it's very important for broader implications in the Middle East, including Hezbollah, Lebanon, and Syria, Iraq. Maybe I'll invite him with your permission, Mario. But the thing is this, right? So you have to remember, Joe Biden has his domestic audience to play to, and for the first time, it looks like Joe Biden is able to get the Republicans to agree on something.
Can I just jump in? Sorry, Zev, something just came up as breaking news, so I do apologize. Amir, I brought up Amir for that. Just want to see how whether it's anything major or not. Amir, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Thanks.
Yeah. So Khomeini just put out a post. I have the Google Translate. Can you just tell me what it? So I have the following, and let me know. Can you correct any mistakes I make? So it's just using Google Translate. The Zionist entity is lying to you, and it's also lying when it express. Can you see it first?
Yes, I have
Amir,
it right
have you
now.
got it
Yes,
open?
yes, yes.
Okay. I'm gonna read it, and I'll pause after every sentence. Only 3 or 4 sentences, and you tell me if anything I should fix. All right. The Zionist entity is lying to you, and it is also lying when it expressed concern about its prisoners with the Palestinians.
Yeah.
So far so good.
Yes.
Okay. Then he says, but Israel also destroys them with the shelling it does. So it's just saying it's lying to you about the prisoners. They don't give a fuck. They don't care about your prisoners, and it's lying with the shelling it does doing just kind of represents that. Fair? Is that what it means?
Yes.
Okay. Then we have, but the occupying entity, so Israel is helpless and confused now, and without American support will be silenced within days. That's a previous statement made.
But he's saying
without American support.
Yeah, but they've been saying that for 20 years. It's the same. It's literally the same speech regurgitated over and over and over again. We're almost verbatim. Like I'm not trying to be confrontational here. It is literally the same thing I heard in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, 2010, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018. It's always the Zionist entity is on its last leg, right? And at the end of the day, what has Iran done? Absolutely nothing. It's the same regurgitation over and over again. It's like hearing Trump say election fraud. It's the same thing.
Well, when you say Iran hasn't done anything, you just had. But when you say Iran has done nothing, didn't you just have? Oh, good. Now I'll let you jump in, but Michael. But didn't you say Iran has done nothing? Wasn't Iran likely behind the biggest atrocity against Jews since the Holocaust?
No. So we have to be very clear here, right? So no one has been able to provide a concrete link in saying that Iran ordered this or that. If anything, Iran has been trying to distance itself, whether that's for strategic purposes.
But Biden did say that was an attempt to.
Biden also said that he had no knowledge of his son's business dealings, and we know that that's not true right now. So
you can't compare. You can't compare this. It's not apples. You can't. He's lying something because it's. Geopolitics is not the same as domestic issues and breaking the law and trying to protect his son.
No, I disagree with you. Okay,
it is in the United States.
It is very much so in America, Mario. So at the end of the day, simply because Biden said something does not mean that something is true. Biden also tried to link Hamas with Vladimir Putin during his Oval Office address. That didn't go over well for a lot of people. Whether or not you support the war in Ukraine is one thing, right? But you can see the clear political attempt to do something. Keep in mind, there's a lot of people that have a bone to pick with Iran. Maybe he wanted to deflect blame away for this or for that. The answer is I don't know, but I do not take his word as the gospel when it comes to Iran being behind it, right? If Israel comes out,
we're talking about the U.S. president. We're not talking about a small party in any across the world. We're talking about the U.S. president, the biggest country in the world, and the most
right. So has Israel? Okay, when at such a time that Israel, the defense establishment, comes out and says we have concrete proof that Iran was directly behind this, then I will listen. But until then, I take everything I hear from every party, including
but you have to. But US wants to de-escalate it. Do you really think if Iran is behind it, the US is going to go out and say Iran is behind it? If they're trying to de-escalate and they're trying everything they can to de-escalate.
Listen, I have not seen.
The same argument you make. Oh, they lie. Okay, I can tell you the same thing. They hide secrets and tell us later.
Yeah, but Mario, I have not seen or heard anything from any American administration that has said we know that Iran was directly at the helm of it. They've made some, they have suggested this, and they've tried to, draw some parallels. That's fine.
The president that said it. I'm not saying the president doesn't lie, but you can't just dismiss the president as nothing.
Can you show me the statement where Joe Biden said Iran was directly plotting, planning? He, not only funding, but they coordinated down to the tactics used. I haven't seen that. Maybe he said that, but I haven't seen it.
He said they did it. He said they did it to jeopardize the normalization deal. Hamas doesn't really care about it as much as Iran does.
Okay, so has he said though that Iran directly?
No, you know what? No, he didn't say that. But I just told you that. Why would he say that if they're trying to de-escalate? It doesn't make strategic sense. Hey, US is trying everything they can to de-escalate, but then they're like, yeah, but Iran is behind everything. That's like the
Well, of course
biggest
they
way
want.
They're
to.
not.
No, hold on,
Ben,
hold on, hold on,
Ben,
no, hold on, hold
Ben.
on. Of course they want to say that, right? Listen, Iran is like the ugly girl at the dance right now in the Middle East. You have Saudi Arabia trying to potentially normalize with Israel. You have Qatar, or excuse me, yeah, the Qataris who are playing a role back and forth. You're forgetting prior to October the 7th, there was a lot of animosity in the region towards what? Towards Iran coming from the Saudis. Why do you think
Fair.
the Saudi Arabia Israel normalization, what do you think that's based on? What? Shared values? Of course not. It's because there's a common enemy in the neighborhood, and that enemy
I
is
actually disagree
Iran.
with you.
Fair.
Before October the 7th, things were happening on the opposite side. Actually,
No, no.
Iran and Saudi Arabia were having proper discussions that weren't happening years before that. So I do believe that this
Gentlemen,
wasn't
I have
For
to.
the
right.
last 20
Ben, Ben, Ben,
but
Ben.
for the last 20 years, I've been hearing the Saudi royal family, including the old king there, right, who's still
Exactly,
alive.
but not before October the 7th.
One
Before
second. One
October the
second.
7th,
Absolutely
nothing
before
on the
October the
contrary was
7th.
Gentlemen,
happening.
But listen,
Guys,
Tarek,
guys,
there has been
guys.
all kinds of
gentlemen.
coordination going on behind the scenes and worrying about Iran's nuclear program. I mean, the fact that they have a colder, thought out, at least thawing out of the relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia, is nothing but shuttleboard diplomacy, right?
Zev, can
The
I can
nuclear
I ask you a
Of
question,
course,
Zev?
program has
yes.
nothing to do with this because they were in discussions with the
It
US.
has
Actually, it
everything
was
to do
on the
with it, Tarek.
contrary.
It has everything to do
It
with
was
it.
on the contrary, Zav. It was the nuclear program was in discussions with the US and things were progressing in a proper way.
Not that nuclear program, Tarek. That's
Now,
not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about, right? What I'm talking about is Iran's nefarious, allegation they're trying to obtain nuclear weapons. That's not something that Israel, but also not something that
what are
Saudi
you talking
Arabia.
about? Are you talking about the JCPOA?
Well, the
Are you talking
JCPO
about it?
is dead.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I'm talking about too. It was stated before that there was discussions between Iran and the United States before October the 7th, and progress was happening there. And there was progress between the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran before October the 7th. So
Gentlemen,
on the
can
contrary,
I
of
say
what
something,
you said.
please? Can I say
Yeah, I
something
need a
very
cigarette.
briefly?
Okay.
Okay, it is in nobody's interest in the Middle East to see an ascendant Iran except Iran. It costs Turkey, it costs Saudi Arabia, it costs Jordan, it costs Egypt, it costs every rational actor in the region to suffer. They have no interest in seeing an ascendant Iran in the Middle East. They do not want to see it. It's in none of their self-interest to see Iran on the ascent. It is not in their self-interest.
But Craig, same can be said about every single country. Turkey is also a threat to the Gulf countries and Iran and Syria.
But
Same can
Egypt
be
is
said
not
about the Arab
exporting
countries.
terrorists. But Egypt is not exporting terrorism
But
and
Turkey,
Wahhabism.
for
Like,
example,
it's not doing it.
it can be debated who is supporting terrorists. Where, for example, Qatar has been blamed a lot for supporting the Muslim Brotherhood and terrorism in the region. Turkey, same thing. It's the same thing. There's these powers fighting, but you cannot say that Iran is a threat to everyone. Everyone is a threat to everyone if they want to gain power in the Middle East. If you want to talk
No,
about
because
it.
the status quo benefits the royal family of both Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and
The same could be stated about Israel, Craig, right? So with the same,
100%.
yeah.
Israel has expansion for a lot of people in the region. Israel has
that is
expansionist
beyond.
thoughts as well.
Can I say
Guys,
something on
let's
that
deal in
point?
reality here, please.
On
Yeah, go ahead, Militia,
So the
please.
strategy of MBS in the last 6 months, a year, was to normalize relations with Iran through China, at the same time to try to reach an agreement with Israel. So they were trying to emulate, you could say, an example is the Sultanate of Oman that has always had good relations with Iran, with Arab countries. It has not gotten involved in wars, for example. Sometimes it has functioned as conveying messages from the US. It actually functioned as the base for secret nuclear talks between Iran and the US for initially. So that was the strategy of the MBS. But the Iranians obviously did not accept that. If you want to have relations with us, normalize relations with us, you can't do it with Israel. That's the point.
Guys, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I guess so. All right. So, Colonel, I want to get your thoughts after I ask that question, and we see Don on stage as well. The question I have for you is, Zev, do you think the US wants to escalate or de-escalate things in the Middle East regionally?
So I think that within the confines of the neighbors of Israel, they want to de-escalate, right? Of course, I think that's obvious. But I'm going to disagree with you. And look, it's a different way of looking at it. But the big threat in the region for years and years and years, and I still believe this true, is something that has united. This is the reason for the Abraham Accords, okay? This is the reason for the Saudi normalizations with Israel, which are still ongoing. is simply because there is a common threat in the neighborhood. Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, right? They don't want Iran to have a nuclear program. So what I'm saying, though, is by shifting the totality of the blame to Iran, you're aligning with most, not all, but most of the Arab nations around Israel to kind of, push Iran off into the side, to kind of marginalize them. Saudi Arabia, look, the Chinese negotiation between Saudi Arabia in Iran, that's very nice. Is that going to change the calculation that MBS makes for the safety of his people? The last thing he wants is a nuclear armed Iran.
Zev, just to go to the question, so you think US wants to escalate things in the Middle East?
They want to de-escalate, but they want to
I think we're off subject.
Hold on,
We're
Zev, 2
talking
seconds.
about
2 seconds.
They want to de-escalate, but I think at the same time they want to try to sever Iran from being able to interfere with what they believe is a new Middle East. Remember Netanyahu's map at the UN.
We can Iran, fair, but they don't currently, with the way things are right now, they do not want to escalate. Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so from a strategic perspective, if you do not want to escalate things, would you, let's say you have intelligence that Iran was involved, would you release that intelligence immediately? You know how Israel will react. Imagine
absolutely.
the public.
Absolutely, you would.
How would Israel react if the US puts out a statement saying Iran was directly involved?
Mario, because the intelligence that the United States would have gotten about Iranian involvement would have come from Israel.
No, but Israel, okay, but even Israel,
Mario.
so number one, hold on. Israel's intelligence is saying is going to be the one informing US intelligence?
The intelligence that the United States relies on, right, the majority comes from Israel. In terms of Iran, that'll come from ask Veripass Colonel Jeff Craig, right? Of course, they're going to double check, verify they have their own sources, both on the ground and so forth. But you cannot separate. Look, who has the best intelligence on all these nations in the Middle East is Israel. That is why Israel and the U.S. have a great alliance.
Where was the intelligence on October the 7th?
That question needs to be answered.
Yeah, you can't. One failure doesn't mean, just quickly, one failure doesn't mean, okay, where was the intelligence on 9/11?
But we're not talking about a small failure, right? We're not talking about.
I never said it was a small failure, but at the end of the day, you can't conflate the two. That is a failure that needs absolutely tough questions need to be asked. People need to be held accountable for. But keep in mind that from that day forward,
who will be accountable? You just said that Netanyahu is not the one person.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. No, I didn't, Tarek. No, I didn't. No, I didn't, Tarek.
No, guys.
Currently, right.
Guys, I don't know if you both know you're talking at the same time, guys.
We are. We're both Middle Eastern. We're yelling. This is how we talk. No, Tarek, I agree with you. At the end of this war, when Hamas is gone, look, of course, Netanyahu is going to have to face some tough questions. Right now, though, in Israeli society, who's going to take Netanyahu's place? Everyone hates Yair Lapid. Everybody hates Naftali Bennett. Benny Gantz doesn't have a lot of credibility. And the fact that they were referenced in this alleged leak from the White House, which is not even true, shows that leak is not even true, right? Bennett got four seats or something like that.
I'll take a step back. I didn't want to go to that. Okay, go ahead, please, because we're getting into Israeli politics again. I'll let you respond. I want to go back to the.
So I'm going to answer your question directly, Mario. The answer is yes. If they had direct.
That's not my question. I'll take it. Let me change the question. Hold on, Zev, just 2 seconds, because we do want to go to the panel. Let me ask you the question differently. Does Israel want a multi-front war, including a war with Iran?
So that's an interesting question. The answer is I don't know. I think that, look, we saw during the end of the Trump administration, right, Netanyahu was clearly pushing Donald Trump to strike Iran. You cannot deny that because that is well known. That being said, I think there is a possibility that some in Israel feel that, look, this is not only an existential threat, this is also an ability to have our enemies weakened. So there is a possibility that there are some, not all, but some people within the Israeli government that from the defense establishment that are saying, look, if the United States is going to come to defend us, come to our back, our goals are aligned, if we can take out the bullies in the neighborhood, potentially it is a calculation that is worth at least working through.
Okay, so
Mario,
I think, and I'm surprised if Veripass agrees with you.
The US point that you asked?
Yeah, Harish.
Very briefly.
Yeah, of course. Just let me just respond. Then I do want to go to Colonel Jeff after you, Hoshiyar. But just my thoughts on this, Zev, is I think in my position is Iran is the one that benefits the most from the instability in the Middle East, because of the pipeline and from India to Europe and the financial benefits that Iran is losing, the ground that they're losing, the influence that they're losing, and they want to shake things up there and jeopardize various things, including the relationship, the normalization deal between Saudi. So Iran benefits from escalation. I think everything was going in Israel's favor. Everything was going in the West's favor over the last few months. Yes, it still is, because October 7th, I think, was a big failure. And I think it did not go as planned. That's my 2 cents.
Well, it's more than that, right? You're pushing Saudi Arabia and Israel together because now you have the Houthis firing. That's not going to go over well with Saudi Arabia.
It went extreme. For me, it's just it's an extreme failure on so many fronts. Israeli failure from an intelligence level. If Iran is behind it, Iranian failure in terms of what the impact should have been. Hamas, I think they failed in achieving their goal. What they've done is they've essentially signed the death warrant. But the point I want to make is, the U.S. does not have, and I'm glad we have Alex here as well, the U.S. does not have an incentive in escalating this. Israel does not have an incentive in escalating this, or the incentive of not escalating outweighs the incentive for escalating. Considering those, their incentives are aligned to not disclose if Iran was behind the October 7th attack. We know they were behind it. You know, they supplied training. We know there's some things we know. It's not about if they're involved. We know how involved were they. Did they know exactly what was going to happen? Because they trained, and there's various intelligence reports. They trained Hamas members prior to this.
But that cuts out your argument. But that cuts out your argument, Mario, because you were making the argument that I potentially agreed with about a week ago, right? That look, did Hamas know that there was going to be an action, or Hamas, Iran? Okay, maybe. Did they know there was going to be some hostages taken in exchange for releasing the Palestinian prisoners? Maybe. Was this tried to derail the Saudi peace deal? Clearly, right? But I do not believe that Iran would dare risk it. And I'd love Alex and other people's viewpoint, because I think it's very important to work through this. Do I think that Iran ordered, the slaughtering of 1,400 people? Absolutely not. So therefore, is there some intelligence that Iran was involved? Clearly. But I just don't think that they were involved to such a degree. And we talked about this. So if you're asking me, what is the incentive? I still think that, look, Biden is very keen to, he wants a foreign policy win. He wants that, the golden apple. He wants Saudi Arabia and Israel to make peace. After that, other Arab nations will make peace. Saudi Arabia is going to say, what's better for our situation? To make peace with Israel, have favor with the U.S., or make peace with Iran and hold Iran and have peace with China? Well, clearly it's the U.S. because, look, all these people, all these countries, these nations, Saudi Arabia, their wealth comes from what? Where is their wealth held? In the United States. So yes, I do think that you can kill two birds with one stone. I think that you can sideline Iran while doing something which is good for, the vision of the new Middle East where everyone's living happy and everything. So I think we have to be a little bit, honest about that. So
let's go to the panel. Let's go to the panel. Look, Jeff, Colonel, I'd love your thoughts on this. I know there's a lot of points discussed, and kind of the whole focus of today's space is what was going to happen next. It's going to be a regional conflict. Tomorrow's speech is going to be a big event in this war, big milestone, not milestone, a big, I'd say a red line that we've always discussed. Like the next red line is Hezbollah joining, the next one is Iran joining. Are we going to cross that red line tomorrow? Colonel, I would love your thoughts, and we'll go to Don.
Can I share some breaking news, Mario?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah,
on the US,
go ahead, Hoshar. Sorry, you were jumping in earlier.
The US wants war or not? Obviously, they don't. But remember the experience of Afghanistan. That's fresh in Biden's mind. He wants to be prepared for the best worst case scenario. That's one. Two, apparently the Iraqi armed forces have directed everybody to prepare for a regional war, a possible regional war. And this is I shared the document on WhatsApp. It's in Arabic. This was 5 days ago. It just came out. It has, a lot of points. I could come back to it after Jeff. Thank you.
So hold on, what did you say? Before going to Colonel
Jeff, the Iraqi armed forces 5 days ago have put out a personal, secret, open by hand document asking everybody in the army to prepare for a possible, regional war, and it has a lot of points. It's very long. I sent it in Arabic. It's 2 pages on the group.
Oh, that's the 2 pages you sent in the group.
If you could have someone, translated, but I have the main points.
Yeah, Hush, can I?
Sorry.
Can I talk to that very directly? What they're trying to do is they're setting up logistical operations. They are setting up for potential.
That's exactly what it is.
So I want to be clear. That's different than troops going on to alert and essentially stand to go to general quarters. They're trying to be prepared. There's a difference.
Hashar, if you have do you have a web link to it before going to Colonel Jeff? Do you have a web link to it that could be translated a lot easier?
It's been published. Yeah, it's been published by Salim Jumaili.
If you can get a web link, so we can translate it, because you
I will
send
send
us images
Google
of a document,
translation,
please, if possible. Please, yeah, that would be great, please, sir. I do want to go to Colonel Jeff, and then we'll go to Don and Alex and Veritas. Colonel, you there? We can't hear you. You got to unmute. We'll go to Don until Colonel unmutes. Hey, Don.
I was just going to comment on where you guys were talking about the 14 billion. That is going to be dead on arrival. There's no chance for that to actually pass Congress. They've already said that from the president's office that would be vetoed, as well as the Senate also said, someone including John Fetterman said that decoupled Ukraine funding with Israel funding would be dead on arrival as well there. And the thing about keeping that kind of information for members of Congress, whether or not Iran was involved with directing and coordinating the attack, they certainly could try to keep that secret to de-escalate, but they can't keep that secret from Congress. And Congress is going to start. You're going to see not actual intelligence leaks from Congress, but you're going to see messaging from individual senators who were privy to that classified information.
I appreciate that update on that.
Point. Yeah.
I do want to go to Colonel Jeff. Not sure if your mic is working. Otherwise, I'm going to go to Alex and then Veritas. All right, Colonel Jeff's mic's not working. Alex, man, a lot has happened since we last had you here. Have you been keeping up with the updates today?
I have, actually. Sorry. So our team from Special Operations Association of America has been working to get civilians off the battlefield. So we got a bunch out yesterday when the gates opened.
Which battlefield?
In Gaza. So we were helping folks that were trapped, that were left behind. So we've been kind of shepherding for the last 3 weeks. So that's what we've been doing, when I haven't been on the air. So we got a bunch of folks out yesterday.
Were they able to come out? Were they able to come out today?
Yesterday and today, yes. We had folks who were Palestinian Americans and Palestinian nationals from other citizenships, as well as NGO workers who were non-Palestinian, who were basically trapped in compounds. So we worked the last 3 weeks to kind of keep them safe, make sure locations were known so that they weren't struck. And Hamas was also cooperative as well with the NGOs to make sure that the people were also safe. So it was something we've done also in Afghanistan, Ukraine. It's non-political. It's just civilians on the battlefield trying to keep people safe. So I apologize for being offline the last day or two, but we were working to get them safe.
Oh well, Alex, have you been keeping up with what's the Hezbollah developments, the Wagner news, the soldiers, the militia members apparently going to the southern border, thousands of them, with tens of thousands on the border between Syria and Lebanon. We've also got the information that Hashar just shared about the Iraqi military. I'm going to get it translated and read. There's a lot happening. What are your thoughts, man? It's just not looking good.
That's the Iraqi official army, Mario, not the militias.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry if I misspoke. Yeah, the official
absolutely.
army.
So yeah, I have been keeping track of the developments. I mean, these are also not disjointed from what's actually going on the ground. And I joined a little bit late here, but from the developments on the ground, what was completed today is that I saw the Israelis have now what I would call they've got a southern line of advance that they've established, north of Wadi Gaza, that's now completely cut across the Gaza Strip, basically preventing.
Which is what you predicted on CNN.
Yeah, because we saw this coming. This is the way it works, right? And then there's two axes and avenues approach from the north, and they've begun now to basically encircle Gaza City. So as we've been talking about here, even preceding CNN, and really here, what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks is exactly what I thought was going to happen. It is a giant cordon. So the outer cordon has now been set. You've got the ocean on one side, the wall to the other. You've got a line of advance to the south below the city, and then you've got movement of troops to the north. And so they're basically going to set a cordon around the city. And then they'll go in and they'll start doing searches and clearing from each of the buildings that are there, looking for the weapons. It's exactly what I said was going to happen. And it's because it's the only way. It's not like I'm some strategic genius. There's not really another way to do it. But it also now, that announcement was made today. And, this is now when I think the onset of the operation is really going to start to go into Gaza City, where you're really going to start to see urban warfare, and we'll have an idea of exactly what the resistance is going to look like. Because, again, it was actually funny, Colonel Spencer just asked, has anybody seen Hamas casualty figures? And we haven't. We've seen 7,000 civilian casualty figures coming from the ministries in Gaza. The Israelis have released their casualty figures from, October 7th, and then their military. But we actually don't know how many Hamas fighters have been killed so far, or how many are inside Gaza City, or how many are going to continue to stay and fight. So what type of resistance they're about to face is really unknown. But again, that's just saying the context of the conversation you're having now, right? All of that stuff is now happening. People pouring in. We're expecting the speech tomorrow, right, from Nasrallah. We haven't heard from him in a bit. We did get some insight, I think, from Hadi, who had some thoughts on what that was going to look like. So again, we are still sitting on that powder keg. That moment we really haven't seen yet, which is the what had been an early policy red line from a number of the neighboring states. Right, if you go into Gaza and you go out on the ground and there's an escalation, we're going to get involved. So far, there's been a little bit of fighting on the outskirts of the city, and they've established now a cordon around it. We haven't yet seen the real, beginning of the urban fighting inside. So I'd still say it's very much unknown at this point. And until that really commences, and we see, whether or not the humanitarian situation on the ground is alleviated, I think this is still an incredibly tense situation. That's really with a bunch of unknown variables.
Hey, Alex, can I ask you a question really quick, just very briefly? Sorry. Is it fair to assume that if Hezbollah crosses the border physically and kinetically in northern Israel, is it safe to say that the United States would have every right in the world to launch strikes against those fighters that enter Israeli territory?
I mean, when you say right, you mean from like a legal perspective, or do you mean from,
Well, from a legal perspective, they're covered, right? So from a legal perspective, they're covered. I'm talking about politically covered, both in the region and the world.
I mean, there's been overwhelming, support when you see it for supporting Israel, and if it's some sort of airstrikes or those things, I'm sure you may have it. But it becomes like you said, a political question as to whether or not they would want to do that. Can the Israelis handle that themselves? Are they going to ask the U.S. that early on for help? I mean, I don't know what the answer is in that sense, but I imagine the U.S. may want to wait until if the Israelis are starting to become overwhelmed and they really need it, or if the actors in the region start going after more U.S. bases and infrastructure. I think we see more direct military involvement. I don't.
Guys, I have some breaking news. The U.S. has intel that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has agreed to provide Hezbollah with a Russian-made missile defense system.
I mean, that's not shocking news, to be honest.
That's for Wagner. That's for Wagner. Just to let you know, those are joined together. Wagner advisors, and then the systems from Syria. Those are both moving in conjunction.
By the way, Mario, just to keep in mind that in 2006, President Bashar al-Assad told Hezbollah, our weapon depots are open for whatever you want. So that's not something.
But why? So, but I know, but like, why right now? Why all this coming in 24 hours before the speech?
It's for Wagner.
What do you mean it's for Wagner?
I don't think Wagner has any presence in South Lebanon, as Craig was saying. But I don't know. I don't think there's any relationship between Hezbollah and Wagner whatsoever.
Mario, I think it's important to know support, right? This support has been there for a very long time, and it's just there to.
I agree with you, Tarek. I think that, look, whatever move the United States makes within reason, Russia's going to try to counter it, right? Because it's a game of chess.
This is as soon as it becomes proxy wars, this becomes very dangerous because then no one cares about.
The whole thing is a proxy war.
But the more it is of a proxy war, like in 2006, it wasn't really a proxy war, less of a proxy war than it is now. The more it leans towards a proxy war, the more, because when they're proxies, when those countries become chess pawns, then no one cares to what happens to those pawns. Lebanon cares about what happens to Lebanon, but not Russia, not the US.
The proxy war is far better.
How is a proxy war far better when the countries you use as pawns and their interests don't matter as much as the interests of other countries that don't matter? Don't care if they get destroyed.
World war. This is it's relatively better.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So what I'm saying, here's what I'm saying. Russia is not sending Russian uniformed soldiers down to advise Hezbollah.
Oh, okay. Syria, a proxy war is better than a direct war between the superpowers, yes, but it's not better than local wars between local countries without the involvement of their.
But it would never happen this way, Mario, because all parties would just support their allies, right? Even if they were superior or inferior to them.
There's a difference. There's a difference between supporting an ally and using a proxy for your own interest.
I meant the first thing you said, Mario, not the second. I meant the first. It's better than nation on nation. It's better proxy on proxy. That's what I meant. I didn't want to.
Mario, Russia before Russia intervened directly in Syria in 2015 in the support of Bashar Assad, the Wagner group were there. So if this news is related to an air defense system, that's probably because Israel could do the most damage from the air if there is a war between Hezbollah and Israel.
But the guys, this is what.
I have a question to Hadi. Actually, Hadi, did Hezbollah speak before about the air defense system? Because I heard this before.
There were reports that Hezbollah got their hands on some I'm not military, so S-200 as well, something Russian, from Syria. But they did hint one time, but of course they're not gonna say that the next engagements of war with Israel is going to be completely different, especially when it comes to the F-16s and F-20 something flying over Lebanon and Beirut. So that hinting is kind of like they're saying that we can get you even if you're in the sky, kind of like
Yeah,
that.
and more hinting happened regarding the targets too. We're talking about airports, we're talking about ports. Those hintings
Yeah,
happen.
exactly.
And would those change the rule of war? Do you think this?
They will change the rule of war because they changed it in Syria when Israel has been bombing Syria for years, and then 2018 the Syrian air defenses downed one F-16. I believe it was an F-16, and there was a soldier in it. Since then, Israel has never been bombing Syria directly from Syrian airspace. They've been bombing it from Lebanese airspace and from the sea. It will change the rules of engagement 100%.
Can you hear me?
It's important to note here
Yes,
too
Mario.
that
No, go ahead, Mike.
oh, sorry. Just really quick on that. That look, just for the context for people, Russia has provided S-300 air defense systems, which are again, medium range, roughly equivalent to the Patriot as far as what the mission profile is, to Syria, and that's been going on for years since the Syrian civil war. But at a certain point, I believe Russia transferred the ownership of some of those systems over to the Syrians, and so even though they're Russian-made, Russia may not actually be involved in the transfer of those systems to Lebanon if they eventually go there. It would be the Syrians, doing that, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Michael,
if they
it's
tried to
Michael.
take it
Just
out.
sorry, like guys. Again, how you have those moments where it just hits you. Literally in the last 24 hours, most of it in the last 6 hours, we have the news of the troops moving from Syria arrived in southern Lebanon from Syria. Thousands and tens of thousands on the border. Again, I'm not going to talk what's true, what's not. These are reports from different sources, and the IDF mentioned it. We have the reports of Wagner in the US commenting on it, the White House or the Pentagon commenting on it. The Wagner supplying pretty advanced missile defense systems. I can't remember the name of it, but it's to one of the tweets. I'll try to pin it in a bit. We have now the related in a way, but Syria offering the missile defense system, Russian missile defense system. I think it's the one from Wagner through Syria, I'm guessing. And then we have what else happened while doing the space? There's one more big thing that happened. I can't remember it. We have the rocket fired from Iraq into the Dead Sea, and then it was a missile. A drone into the Dead Sea. But that's the first time an Iraqi militia fired onto an Israeli target. So symbolically, it's just showing that things are escalating.
Also,
so that all happened
of the U.S. military bases in Syria.
Yeah, but this I won't mention it because this is pretty common from before. But I'm saying like new developments that are brand like the first time the first time that happened, and that's
and
all
on the
last. That's
political
all.
side, Mario, the political side, and obviously the humanitarian side, you had a veteran reporter. He's been killed, Muhammad Abu Hatta.
But that's my heart goes to him. But I think that doesn't mean much on a geopolitical level on whether Lebanon's going to get involved.
It does, because the killing of journalists does have implications in war. And then the other thing
Not
is,
really,
like, you had
Habiba, just
Durban.
let me with all respect, I don't think a journalist's death is from a humanitarian perspective is disgusting, and one of the things I hate the most in this war is how many journalists have died. But when we're talking about whether this is going to become a geopolitical war, I don't think a journalist is going to make much of an impact on that. But like I'm really the reason I'm really focusing on this is I've got a panel here. Some of you have been covering this with us since the beginning. For us, I'll get you up in a second. But Alex, Michael, Hoshiar, and obviously the co-hosts. So the question I have for you, and Jeff, I don't know if your mic is working. What would you position now? And I've asked that question before. What would you say is the likelihood that Hezbollah will join the war tomorrow or in the next week? Let's go with Alex first. And Jeff, you can unmute whenever your mic finally works. Alex, what do you think now?
All right, I'll give you the quick answer up front, and I'll give you a little explanation. You can cut me off if I go on for too long there.
Perfect. Go ahead.
I put it about 50-50. And then when I say that for getting involved, that doesn't mean a full-blown ground invasion of all of Hezbollah's fighters. But I think there is definitely a realistic possibility of increased missile and rocket salvos coming out of southern Lebanon into Israel. We simply don't know at this point. There's a couple of big events, like we said, Nasrallah tomorrow. Like the developments that you mentioned here, and the ground offensive is really about to start in earnest inside Gaza City. But again, Lebanon is broke. This is not a place that really wants a war right now. But Hezbollah also has, some face saving they're going to have to do at a bare minimum. Never mind what they actually would like to do. So I put it at 50-50. It's unknown. There's not a lot to gain, like you said, strategically through the ground. I don't think Iran's going to want to expend all of their strategic ballistic missile and rocket stocks inside Lebanon, because again, I've mentioned before, we still have an unresolved Iranian nuclear program issue to deal with after this Gaza situation, one way or the other is resolved, however that ends up being. And if they do that and they expend Hamas and they expend Hezbollah as proxies, they've now got limited response options in the region, other than like little tit-for-tat attacks here by some of the militias in Iraq, and it really leaves them with the ability to have to respond directly. So there's a lot of variables at play here.
So I have the high alert. Let me read this high alert up for the Iraqi. I've got the whole alert there. I'm going to be posting it in a sec. Let me just read it out for everybody. All right, let me prepare it. And then this is what Hoshari mentioned. Hoshari has been extremely helpful in sending all this information to us. Iraqi armed forces preparing for conflict with Israel. High alert. The General Command of the Iraqi Armed Forces issued a confidential directive outlining defensive measures in anticipating of a potential regional war. 1. Establishment, preparation, and activation of alternative headquarters with dedicated communication and staff. Okay, it's 13 points. What I'm going to do before I keep reading it. So this is a high. Hoshar, can you just tell us briefly what it is before I go back to the panel on the question I had earlier, while I prepare it to post it out for everyone to read it as I go through it. Can you just give us a quick overview of what it is?
One moment.
Hoshar, are you there?
1 moment. Let me get back to it. So I don't have it. Yeah.
Mario, can I ask Alex a quick question about the hostages?
In a second. In a second. I know you're trying to jump in, but I just want to focus on just that. I don't want to be rude. Go ahead.
So this is as I said, personal secrets opened by hand documents, 2 pages. This was dated.
So what does that mean? It's so fully confidential?
Only through a courier.
Sorry, how'd you get your hands on it?
Well, there is this guy, you will find it interesting. He was the head of the American section in Iraqi intelligence under Saddam Hussein. He lives in Istanbul now. His name is Salim al-Jumaili. He's putting out a lot of, important things. He just put it out like 5 minutes before I sent it.
Okay. I think this is very important. Before I put it out, I'm going to put it out now. How important is this?
Well, as I think it was Craig who said it, it's basically preparing for a possible war. So they are saying disperse, command centers, disperse all the, logistics, activate surveillance capabilities, human and intelligence. Make sure you spread, the weapons, the warehouses to different places. All of this. So
just saying, hold on. Just sorry to interrupt. Are you saying Iraq is preparing for war?
They are preparing for the possibility of a regional war. I will tie it to the speech by Nasrallah. If tomorrow Nasrallah declares war, for example, which I said he won't directly, he will say we are already in this war, we have bled for this war, for Palestine and whatnot. And then one of the places that the US could retaliate is Iraq. So the Iraqi army has to prepare for that scenario.
Yeah, so essentially, I'm just going to translate that. What that essentially means is that you have active duty units that are going to their command disbursement areas. Iraq is not in a position to mobilize its army for any length of time. Essentially, that just puts people on a different heightened readiness. It disperses, as he said, ammunition and other things to pre-positioned areas. The reserves have not been called up. The militias are not spouting things out of control. The Iraqi army is doing this for force protection. It is doing this in case you see people attacking U.S. bases, attacking Iraqi positions. It's so that they're prepared and that they're dispersing to pre-planned places.
This is normal preparation. I don't see what the whole issue is about.
Yeah,
you
but
guys
if
are
you
exaggerating into something beyond what it is. This is normal. This is very normal that they should do that.
It has not happened in the last. It has not happened in the last 10 years.
What happened yesterday was there was a cabinet meeting yesterday, right? And they removed the head of counterterrorism operations, and he held a big cabinet meeting.
He was very close to the US, yes. He was replaced by someone who was in counter-terrorist forces, but he's close to Iran, to the chief.
Yeah, I sent the thread.
So how's preparing? Sorry, just how's preparing for a regional war normal?
It's not normal. This is never,
Mario,
as far as I know, we have not seen anything like this in the last.
It's preparing for the possibility, and they should be prepared, like any other country should be prepared. It's like if you are at war, if you think that there's a war coming your way or nearby, and they are part of the axis of resistance, they should be.
That's extremely important because we are talking about whether there is a possibility of a regional war. So if they are preparing for that, that means that there are some indication tied with the fact that all the
If they are
PMF forces
preparing
were.
for it, does not mean there is a possibility. It means there's a possibility, but doesn't mean that there's a guarantee there's possibility.
Okay, guys, okay, guys. It's a very simple question. To know if it's normal or not, when was the last time this happened? Hala, do you know?
Seen that.
Well, we
This
haven't been
ISIS. ISIS. This happened during the invasion of
we
ISIS.
haven't been in this situation, like this kind of regional scenario that now is impacting.
So essentially what you're saying, Hala, does that mean that this is the highest alert since ISIS?
Yes.
How's that normal?
Well, normality is not that this is something that happens every week or every day. These are circumstances, and now.
What year was ISIS? What year was ISIS?
2014.
ISIS, yeah, and it went on for.
So we're looking, so it's a decade though.
It's not the same. Even then, with ISIS, it's not the same as this. This is on a different level. This is about an axis that is related and linked with each other. And they are all being prepared for the worst case scenario. Now, whether the worst case scenario happens or not is another story. But the fact of the matter, they all have to be ready and prepared.
Mario, don't forget, ISIS took 1/3 of Iraq in a few days. So Baghdad was under threat.
That's what I mean. Like when I'm talking about, you're talking about this is so normal that the last time it happened is when Iraq was invaded by ISIS.
No, I'm not saying.
Mario,
I'm not
can I make this
simple?
simple? Can I make this?
I'm not saying it's normal.
Go ahead, guys.
I'm not saying it's normal at all. I'm saying it's when a situation like this asks for it or demands it, then they have to be ready. During ISIS, actually, Iraq was not ready, was not prepared. And like Hushar was just saying, it happened so quick, no one knew what hit them. They're not going to be through that. They're not going to go through that. And this is a different level. ISIS was something that was happening. It was bad, it was evil, but it was still... This is beyond. This is now we're talking.
So quickly, just quickly, just 2 seconds. Okay, understand, Hala.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, let me press it. I understand. Just 2 seconds, Craig. Yeah, she can. Alex, just quick question, very quickly, because I just want to make sure I word the post. How normal is this, Alex and Craig? Very briefly, please, or Michael, quickly, guys. I want to get your thoughts as well.
Sure. So I think the word normal in this case, I think was kind of, it's appropriate, but let me explain because I think it was kind of taken out of context. It's normal given the circumstances, right? It's a normal mobilization in response to what's going on around them. What would be abnormal is if it was a mobilization that then also looked like it was taking an offensive posture, like the Iraqi army was going to get involved. Those are two very different things.
Mario, can I provide
real tripwire
some
here,
insight,
the
Mario?
real tripwire? The real trip. I'm sorry. The real tripwire is if you see the activation of reserve units. If you do not see those, then things are fine.
But the reserve things are
Mario,
fine.
Let me provide the inside look. President Biden, Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin have talked to the Iraqi Prime Minister.
Just hush, 2 seconds. I've just, for the audience, so everyone waiting, I've put out the report, just pinned it above. I've just posted it now after I got everyone's feedback. So if you want to go through, I haven't read it yet. I haven't even read the whole thing, but it's translated and it's pinned at the top. And I'll read it I'll read it out for the audience in a bit. But Hoshar, go ahead, and then I'm going to start reading it out and get the panel thoughts.
Secretary Blinken and Austin called the Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia Sudani more than once. From what the information I have, they gave him 2 messages. One, you are the Prime Minister, the Commander-in-Chief of all armed forces. That includes the PMF forces, by the way, the proxies, because they are part of the Iraqi army. Legally, they have a $6-7 billion budget for this year. So you are the Commander-in-Chief. You have to control these groups. If you don't, so that's the, asking part. The second part, if you don't, and if we are attacked by these people, we will retaliate. That's how I read it. That's the information I have.
Did you watch the cabinet meeting yesterday?
And it was on
high alert. They are on high alert.
So, but just a quick question. But this, So another question though. Michael, go ahead. Sorry.
The PMF in some of these meetings that have been happening as well, and obviously, as Hoshar and other people have pointed out, that's ridiculous. Of course, the PMF is very integrated with the Iraqi government, and it'd be hard to get them to meet with different counterparts without the PMF, being there or hearing about it.
That's true.
So, guys, I have a question. So I forgot the question.
I can. There's a break here from Natasha Bertrand. She's the CNN national security correspondent. You were talking about the surface-to-air missiles, or the air defense system. So Wagner, according to her reporting here, and I'll send you the tweets from her, Russian mercenary org Wagner Group, which operates in Syria, has been tasked with carrying out the delivery of the surface-to-air 22 systems to Hezbollah. So the systems
Just
are
like
for
I said.
Hezbollah,
Just like I said.
not for Wagner. Wagner's
Nice one,
delivering
But
Craig.
in
to Hezbollah.
post-Brozhkin, that will not happen without Kremlin's approval.
Why?
Because now the Wagner Group is officially on contract with the Russian army, right?
No, I think Wagner depends. Is all of Wagner's under the contract of the Russian army, or I think the international ones are still independent?
Take contracts. I mean, they can take. I mean, if it depends on what the arrangement is, which I think we all have to agree we don't really know. Even if Wagner is tasked with delivering the system, they may not be the ones actually, escorting it in transit. They may subcontract that out. Or
But
why
is Wagner delivering it? Why can't the Syrian armed forces deliver it?
Because usually Wagner has the most experience with these systems, with these SA-22 Pantsers. And so right. We saw this in Libya too. We saw the same exact thing happen in Libya when you had those factions going at it. Russia decided to provide SA-22s where they felt it would help sort of, hinge the battle a little bit. And I think what's interesting to me now, what I'm curious is, the intel capabilities that are being mustered, again, for, targeted against, southern Lebanon and everything right now are very, very significant from the U.S. and from Israel. I wouldn't be surprised if the Israelis decided to conduct an airstrike on this system in transit, given that they have a proven ability to reach into Syria.
Absolutely.
And I think it would be a thing where if it's just one SA-22, I think the Israelis could probably get away with it without it escalating things to basically just say, gotcha, like, nice try, not going to happen. Because I find it very, very hard to believe, as someone that has a lot of experience with the region and with this kind of, with Wagner as well, I find it impossible to believe that they can get this system into southern Lebanon and transit it all the way through Syria without the Israelis having eyes on it. And I feel like if they have eyes on it, even the U.S. would probably say, go ahead and take the shot.
Keep in mind,
let's add.
Guys, I have more
let's
guys.
add to this. Hold on, Mario. Listen, but Michael.
No.
Let's add to this. What this is coming
Chris.
from and where this is being blown up is because
you can't hear
we're
me.
watching.
Yeah, Chris, I had to mute you, man, because I just had just now another news just came in. Hadi, are you there? Yeah. In a special call, Hezbollah, Hadi, can you confirm you're there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Hezbollah asks its members abroad to come to Lebanon.
Not true.
Okay, let me send you the link.
And I can tell you the link or no? I can tell you why it's not true. Because Hezbollah...
You know too much, by the way. I don't know how you know so much, but go ahead.
Dude, because I live there, But like, let me tell you, because Hezbollah members who are actually, they don't have to, they can fight or not. They don't leave, they're not allowed to travel. That's the thing. If you're a part of Hezbollah and something that sensitive, you're not allowed to travel, especially to Western countries. If they're gonna call people, it's probably from Syria, but there is no such thing as like mobilization from abroad and all that, because they already have everything prepared on the ground.
And if I may add, the elite forces of Hezbollah are not abroad. They are in Lebanon, within Lebanon, have always been and always will be. They do not come from abroad. They are not scattered around the world, and they don't need that for their defenses.
Exactly. And the only ones who are abroad probably on religious visits to Iran, like the shrines or Syria or Iraq.
Well, can't be, yeah, but or visiting family overseas and stuff, no?
No, they're not even allowed to come to Europe. Like, they don't even come here.
Okay,
we have another one here.
Reasons, Mario, because they could be recruited.
Okay, Hashar. Okay, but Hashar, you sent me something else. Oh, this is the analysis by Harat.
No, that's citing sources from Hezbollah. So it indicates they're already in the war, but they will, intervene more extensively if Hamas' survival is threatened. So they are already in it.
Which we saw today. The escalation is happening already. So, and this is what I think we will all hear tomorrow in the speech, right? So I don't believe that there would be a war declaration as much as more support to Palestine.
But this is just semantics.
They are already in it.
Whether they declare war, they support. Yeah, like this again. We're going back semantics. Like I hate when someone says, "Mario, you can't say declare war." The title says this. I'm like, you want to call it whatever you want. Whether they declare war or they declare escalation or they say they say something cryptic as they always do. the movement, I've always said this, the movements of the ground is what we should pay attention to first, the rhetoric second, because the rhetoric is used for different purposes with different. The
Exactly.
movement on
This
the
is
ground
why
is
we're
just the
saying.
last.
This is what we're saying, that they're already at war. It's not about declaration of
They've been
war.
at war. They've been at war. They've been at war since the beginning. They've been at war for weeks. But what I'm saying is that this is going to escalate significantly based on what we're seeing on the ground to a level where Lebanon's at risk, and it's not going to be to the. It's been limited to that region. But look, guys, we just moved away completely from the Iraqi announcement, the Iraqi army, because they've just gotten bombarded with all this information. Let me take a step back. The tweet that's still pinned above. So I'm just going to read this now. Let me open it up on my laptop, and everyone on the audience can open it up because there's a lot of points there. It's 13 points. So let's go through what it says. So this is a leaked document about Iraq is preparing for possibility of regional war. It's a leaked document that Hoshiyar, a regular panelist, told us about how he got his hands onto that document. So that's Iraqi armed forces preparing for conflict with Israel. Is it with Israel? Someone added this to the tweet.
No,
is that with Israel? Or we don't know.
For regional war. That includes Israel, but others as well.
Okay, so I'll keep Israel there. It's fine. Yeah, it's not misleading.
Just really quick, Mario, so you know, it looks like the images, though, in your tweet are actually from the Islamic Resistance of Iraq claim.
I've put the wrong images. Hold on.
In Arabic.
Yeah, I have the document. I've got the wrong
It's not
ones
that
here.
it would get. They might not get engaged directly with Israel. Like it's the same situation as the Houthis, for instance, sending missiles over, and then Saudi having to stop them. And it's the same.
I've
with the
updated.
Jordanian.
So I've updated the images. I've put the right ones there. I appreciate you pointing that out. So check the images now, refresh it, and tell me if it's the right ones, guys. It should be.
Mark, can I just say one thing just very quickly before you get to that? Just 2 seconds. Remember that if Hezbollah gets involved, the Shia militias in Iraq will also be incentivized to be involved in at least some way. So it would make sense that the Iraqi army was getting into a position to handle any sort of Shia revolution, Shia militia activity, activity around U.S. bases, activity around Iraqi Air Force bases. This is a forced posture measure. This isn't an escalatory measure. It's a forced posture measure to ensure that they are prepared if Hezbollah decides to go further. This is not the Iraqi army.
But why is everything happening a day before the speech? It's like suddenly everything.
Mario, as I said,
to be prepared.
In addition to that, the PMF force are part of the Iraqi army, so Iraqi forces could be targeted. Their warehouses could be targeted. That's the point. That's the connection.
What is it relate? Okay, so before going to Alex and Veripass, let me just read out what we're talking about here. War Monitor, I think you just dropped out, so if you're on request again, it's glitching. So let me read out exactly what and Tarek, can you send an invite to War Monitor? I think it's glitching for speakers. All right, so the General Commander of the Iraqi Armed Forces issued a confidential directive outlining defensive measures in anticipation of a potential regional war. All right, let me get the right document pinned because we've just updated the screenshot, and I'll start going through the various points. All right, so I've got that up. All right. 1. Establishment, preparation, and activation of alternative headquarters with dedicated communication and staff. Strategic dispersal of main warehouses, ammunitions, weapons, equipment to secure locations without hampering operational readiness. Deployment of various aircraft to air bases with enhanced security arrangements. Field commanders instructed to disperse armored units, emphasizing protection and concealment. Priority of safeguarding camps, weapons depots, and leadership equipment through elections. Units urged to maintain readiness by relocating to multiple controlled sites. Establishment of alternative transportation networks to facilitate rapid communication. This is a preparation for a full-on war. Emphasis on equipment maintenance and readiness, aligning with tactical requirements. Again, I'm not the military expert, so I'll get the military experts to comment. It's just I'm reading it, the initial instinct. Continuous field engagement by leaders at all levels to enhance unit readiness. Camp security procedures reinforced, including system gates, watchtowers, and patrols. Unwavering commitment to prison protection with zero tolerance for lapses. Enhanced intelligence efforts, activation of technical surveillance resources, threat assessments, real-time information sharing, and a comprehensive review of all intelligence assets. And last point is security and intelligence center for prisons, directed to ensure real-time information sharing and prompt actions. Alex, and then Veripass, and then I'll get War Monitor.
Right?
This is, so Alex, again, just read this out. First time since ISIS. Your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, provided that this document is real, and I mean, Hoshiar is a very smart man, and I trust a lot of the things he said over the last few weeks because they've been spot on. I don't know that the document is accurate, but provided that it is accurate, and let's just assume that it is for the purposes of the conversation we're having now, right? We can have a separate debate about that afterwards. A lot of this sounds like defensive posturing, right? Disperse the armored air. It looks like they would be preparing or expecting some sort of potential, attack, and to prepare themselves in defensive positions by dispersing the armored units, making sure the supplies are not centrally located so they wouldn't be struck. So that's what it sounds like there. But then the next question you would ask yourself is, why the hell would they be doing that? So, I mean, let's face it, you have Syria in between, right? You've also got, Jordan as well in terms of the borders with Israel. Iraq's not going to go rolling through, nor their tanks or whatever else. We're not going to see that happen. But are they potentially preparing for what at that point? Is this strikes against the militia groups, or is there going to be an escalation, not necessarily of anything else other than potentially the militias, right? Because it was just mentioned, they got an official line in the budget. So these are the Shia militias that helped as the ground force in the defense of Iraq, right, against ISIS. Because, again, everybody's like, oh, why don't we try the same ISIS-style campaign inside of Israel, inside of Gaza? Well, because the Israelis can't. They don't have a ground force. We had the Kurds and the Free Syrian Army, whatever that equivalent was in Syria, and then you have these groups in Iraq to deal with. And so they're there now, and they're also being used as proxies to attack U.S. bases in the region. So is this preparation for potentially attacks against the U.S.?
They're worried.
Yeah, of course that's.
I don't think it's about attack. I don't think they're worried about further attacks on U.S. forces. I think they're worried about further internal conflict in the Iraqi military between these Iran-aligned Shia militia forces and then the kind of regular Iraqi army. The other thing I'd point out and shout out to, I believe it was Habiba who flagged this for me earlier today. The Iraqi government just removed the pro-U.S. leader of CTS, which is the Iraqi Counterterrorism Service, which has been by far and away one of the best, U.S. partners in Iraq for years now. And so I think what they're concerned about is very similar to what we saw, when we've had previous tension between the PMF and kind of this, semi-integrated, semi-not integrated, Shia forces, right? And then kind of the leftovers of the regular, Iraqi regular army, right? And I think that is a bad sign to me because I'm worried that if that kind of conflict breaks out, that's where we've seen, possible escalations around the U.S.
To confirm your point, Michael, the Islamic resistance in Iraq just put out a statement that says that next week we will begin a new phase in confronting the enemies, and it will be more severe and widespread on its bases in the region. So I think what you're saying is just confirmed by the.
It just looks like it's like Iran just pressed the red button.
No, they did it over a week ago. So they also warned the US to watch the Jordanian border, that they would be disruptive in the
and UAE as well.
Mario,
yeah,
and
Mario,
UAE.
just to emphasize.
No, Kuwait and
Mario,
UAE.
Just to emphasize.
I'll go back. Can I go back and finish?
Yeah, go ahead, Alex, and then Hashim.
I was exactly where Michael was going with the end of that. What they're worried about are the militias, like I was saying. And they're worried about it for two reasons, right? It's for attacks on U.S. bases, which is where we were in the second part of this, where Michael is. Is there a potential for some sort of upheaval internally? I'm very curious for the domestic political reasons for removing the counterterrorism head, as they just mentioned. So everything that's been said is completely accurate. I think what's very interesting here is the internal political dynamics in Iraq, and I would be very curious for any of the Iraqis who are on here to be able to speak to the internal political dynamics right now that you're seeing play out. Because there's been a number of the parties that have not been in favor with Iran. They've come in and they've come out, Muqtada al-Sadr being one. And so it's been this contentious relationship. But I think there's, for lack of a better term, rallying around the flag at the moment. But you have a secular government that's now paid for a lot of these forces, right? So is this like a biting the hand that feeds situation? How big of a monster did you create? I don't think they really know. So I do think this is preparing for unknown contingencies. But they're not doing it for no reason. They must have some information or indication that there's a potential for something to happen.
Alex, can I? I'm just going to dovetail on that for 2 seconds. I'm
done rambling. It's all yours.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. I apologize, sir. You have to remember that the internal conversation that is happening in Iraq right now is that it can't be so pro-Western, so pro-United States that they lose the ability to negotiate with the members of those militias. And if you have somebody that's hardcore United States or what have you, just like Michael described, you lose the leverage in that conversation, or you don't have the political capital in that conversation to be able to have nice, delicate negotiations rather than somebody who's absolutely pro-U.S. and is anti-militia. So they need somebody in that room negotiating with these units. The way that it works in that area, everybody can tell you, is that it's all about relationships, right? At this level of government, it's all about relationships. And if you have somebody in there that has a better relationship with some of these militias, I would argue that's a better person to have in the room than somebody who does not have a good relationship with some of these militias and some of these local leaders.
And just to emphasize the Mario, how important the removal of the leader of the counterterrorism group is. In 2019, the previous Prime Minister, Hadi Abdul Mahdi, removed him. It actually was one of the catalysts that led to demonstrations, the Tishrin Revolution, and led to the fall of the government.
Exactly.
So they were forced to bring him
somebody
back.
in that room. Exactly. They need somebody in the room to negotiate with these that those groups trust. They cannot deal with somebody.
No, Craig. No, it's the opposite. It's the opposite, man. I love you, but it's the opposite. The issue is that you're now touching off the exact kind of shuffles at the higher levels of government where there are a number of really, really important, delicate political sort of maneuvering that has to be done to make all these factions happy, and changing that at this point will throw things into disarray, at least politically, and hopefully not beyond that. But I think Hoshiar can back me up on that. That right, this is exactly the kind of political maneuvering that led to previous demonstrations when you had PMF guys in the streets in Baghdad. Things came to a total standstill. So I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but this is not a good development.
Is this not all to be expected, though? Is this? I mean, is this pretty much on par what we would expect? Is anything actually that out of the ordinary?
I think
what are you talking about?
The precautions that are being taken make sense for the same kinds of previous iterations of this kind of fear about a tension between the regular Iraqi army and some of these PMF groups, right? So again, I'm not super concerned so much about the mobilization. I'm more concerned about over the period of the next several weeks, not in the immediate term. How does the Iraqi government make sure that replacing the head of CTS kind of unceremoniously doesn't cause other fractures that are more of an internal stability concern, and I think less so tied to the Israel-Hamas conflict. But whatever Hoshiar
CTG is the most effective force that fought ISIS. So if you are Iran, if you're expecting a regional escalation, you want to make sure everybody in command is close to you.
So guys, so Hoshiar, can I ask you a question? It's important. So Alex was skeptical on what this.
I just want to thank everyone contributing and sending videos to Mario's DMs. Another reminder: if you have any new video and any breaking news, please feel free to contribute and send to Mario's DM, please. Mario.
Yeah, so just send it as a private message. So Hoshiar, the Alex was skeptical of the authenticity of the document, which is fair because it's such an important document. So Alex, is there any specific reason, or just how serious it is?
Just the manner in which it came in. And I mean, again, I trust Hoshiar, and so we don't know exactly how the other guy got it. Was it real? We haven't seen anything else to confirm it for right now. So that's what I'm saying. For the purpose of the conversation, treat it as real to answer your questions you had there. And the last real one before I turn it back to you is the mobilization itself doesn't necessarily scare me in terms of it being, potentially in response to an unknown regional war, that could happen based on a whole host of factors. That would be normal. The question that we really need answered for if this is in fact real is from within Iraq, if somebody knows, do they in fact know something that caused them to do this mobiles? That's the real question that needs to get answered. Is there something specific?
There's a warning. Just remember what Tariq mentioned before I go to Hoshiar. Just remember what Tariq mentioned. Tariq, can you just draft a tweet with the team, please, under what you mentioned, the Islamic Republic in Iraq.
Yeah.
Who claimed attacks against, so they've warned the next week we'll have more advanced weapons due to the war in Gaza.
Yeah, I'll drop one.
Can I just? I think it's important, something that Michael said just now. I think this is really important to contextualize the entire region right now, because this is government.
Sorry, just say, Craig, I don't want to be rude. I want to really get a bit more information on the source of the document, Hoshiar, because it is pretty important.
Well, I've seen
document. Can you tell us more, please?
I've seen previous documents. I have zero doubt that it not be an authentic document, and I could speak to the internal dynamics of Iraq, because I mentioned a couple of days ago that ISIS is still there. So when you are talking about prisons, for example, as one example, what one of the points, most of those in prison are ISIS. So it could, if there is, internal problems for the Iraqi government, one of the things that they could they guard are those ISIS members. Because if you look at the Iraqi government now, you have a prime minister who's a Shia, but he's famous for being, anti-corruption and whatnot. But the majority of parliament members are part of the coordination framework. That's the main Shia parties. So Nouri al-Maliki, Hadi al-Amali, Qais Hazali, who's by the way designated, a terrorist by the U.S. He was in the U.S. prison when the U.S. Was in Iraq. The U.S. Army was here. They have all of them are very close to Iran. The Speaker of Parliament, the President of Parliament, is a Sunni, Mohammed Halbousi, and he was aligned with Muqtada Sadr, who was pushed out because he was a nationalist. He was trying to rebuild relations with the Arab countries, open up to the regional countries, not being under the influence of Iran. And then you have the Kurds, and we are part of that government. Two major political parties. One is more close to Iran, the other is more close to Turkey and the Gulf countries.
So if I could just, Mario, for 2 seconds. Number one, I got a lot of DMs because I cut off Alex. So let me apologize again to Alex for those people I offended. Number two, I just want to say to Michael, in regards to that swap that we're talking about, first of all, I'm not doubting your expertise here. I'm not in a position to doubt your expertise. So let me just get that out of the way. But what I'm saying is that the internal changes that you're seeing to adjust, remember, we have to remember where we are from where we were from, right? We always said governments were preparing for what the world looks like a week from now. And we said that last week, right? This is a part of that shift as governments change. And in regards to that person that Michael is talking about, Michael, you and I, we have to connect somehow because I'm not going to get a verified account, so I can't DM you. But the issue that we have is that person that is now in charge, not the one that is in charge now, but the person who was in charge, correct me if I'm wrong, but he had a lot more personal relationships to the Iraqi militias, to the ones that helped during ISIS, than the one who is there now. Am I wrong about that?
You are not wrong, but he was also one of the few commanders that stayed in Mosul, that fought, that retreated, and didn't leave any armored vehicles and ammunitions, because most of the Iraqi officers put on, civilian clothes and basically fled Mosul, the largest city, and ISIS took over. So he's famous for being a brave commander, and he's been the deputy commander of CTG for a long time.
But what I'm saying is that, again, I'm not trying to insinuate anything here, but everybody knows that's been to the Middle East or knows the Middle East knows that at this level, it's about personal relationships, right? And that's what I'm trying to drill down on. And it reflects higher to a larger context of how nations are reacting, right? When the pressure comes, personal relationships matter more. So that's what I'm trying to get. That's what I'm trying
you
to
could
figure
say
out.
in a sentence, he is more trusted than Abdul Wahid Saadi, who was removed, as not being as close to the US. As I said, he was removed earlier. It led to the fall of the government. They were forced to bring him back, and now removing it in this critical moment, that means they don't really trust him 100%.
Right.
Okay. That's
the issue with that. The issue with that is that he is one of your only, and CTS in general is one of your only main checks against a lot of the sort of worst impulses of many of these PMF and Shia militia groups. And so the concern is, if you're going to replace him and you're going to basically say, look, any kind of back channel to the US through CTS, we're going to take away or we're going to mitigate, I think that is destabilizing. And I think that the issue then becomes, if we're going to see more internal conflict within Iraq where these Shia militias decide to push for even more control of the government or more control of the armed forces or something like that, I think, again, 2019 is a very, very good illustrative example here, because you have similar tension that led to, a lot of posturing in the streets between both sides, and you had similar orders go out for Iraqi army regulars to move the tanks and kind of assume some of these positions. So I feel like, again, the issue here has more to do with some of the internal dynamics in Iraq and less so about external threats related to
Sorry,
Israel Hamas.
can
But again,
I,
like
Michael?
Alex said, we don't know, what the impetus is for the letter, so we don't know.
Michael, can I ask you a quick question? If this Iraqi leaked document is true, which I'm leaning to, being pretty confident it is, what does that mean with everything else that happened? What does that mean for tomorrow's speech and what Hezbollah will do? So we were debating for a while whether Hezbollah will join the war. Alex said it's a 50-50. I don't know if it changed after seeing that document. What would your position be now? And when I say joining the war, I mean, obviously, you know what I mean, like escalating and going almost all in, where Lebanon as a country will get impacted.
Yeah, look, well, you may not like this answer as a former intel officer, but I think it's 50-50 as well. And I think that Nasrallah's speech is going to be a huge moment tomorrow. And I think that it does make sense to me that there could be a rationale for the Iraqis to send out orders like this if they were fearing an escalation there. However, I'm just speaking from personal experience, having been working Iraq in 2019 when all this went down between the regulars and the Shia militia groups. It just looks very similar to me to the same kinds of things that we saw, the same kind of things that were being communicated between the government on what is going to happen. So that's why I'm not convinced that this scenario is perfectly linked to what could happen with Hezbollah or what could happen in Gaza or Israel. It's possible, but I think that, like Alex mentioned, the big question is, what was the impetus for this letter? What happened that made the Iraqis go, oh shit, we have to go and we have to send this out, we have to mobilize our forces? To me, just again, based on my analysis, you would need something a little bit more concrete or immediate than the notion that we could have some general escalation tomorrow. We could have more rocket attacks from Hezbollah tomorrow. We could even have maybe some more drone attacks from Hezbollah tomorrow. To me, that you wouldn't take these kinds of steps if that were the concern. So I feel like it has to be something more immediately tied to something that could happen in Iraq, if they're worried about attacks on the Iraqi government, if they're worried about further attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq, that they would lose the ability to control. So I think those are to me, that's what stands out more, is that this is more about something that could happen in Iraq and less so about, Hezbollah.
So two things, yes, that's it, exactly. The CTG forces were used to protect the government whenever there was upheaval. The second, they were the first ones on site when U.S. diplomatic missions, European diplomatic missions were used to be targeted, a couple of years back. So it's exactly those two reasons.
Okay, so Ryan and Tarek, if you could review, I've just tagged you in the group, the rest of the document from the leak. The team just put it out in English, so I want to read the rest of it. Can you just review it, if you don't mind, just confirm it, and then I'll read it out. Also, I've got the statement from the Islamic resistance in Iraq declaring that they're going to escalate things next week. So I'll read that out as well.
Some people asked about the date. It is a T1, that's, October for Iraq, Tishrin al-Awwal. So there is no mistake in the date.
Oh, okay, if you could put it in the comments of the tweet as well,
sure.
That'd be perfect. Okay, so I'm going to read that out in a second. I'll be posting out as well the official statement from the Islamic Republic. So you got 50-50, Michael, and I see Piotr is back. Piotr, I'll go to you as well in a bit. Hoshar, I want to ask you that same question. And Veripas, so Hoshar, Veripas, Hadi, and then we'll go to Piotr because I know he's probably have a few comments. Hoshar, from what we've seen the developments now, where do you stand on Hezbollah fully entering the war?
I think,
without getting into semantics.
I think what we are seeing just confirms what we said the first time I got on the space, that the political decision is there, and it's from Tehran, and the best evidence was the foreign minister going there, and then you had small but important changes, and I think they've been involved. I think in the speech, Nasrallah will tomorrow pride himself in saying we've been on the side of Palestinians, we are not abandoning them, we have bled for them, and so forth. And then probably some conditions about how we can control that. The final red line being the destruction of Hamas, as was set out by the Israeli government after the October 7 attack. And so far they are concentrated on the north. I think they afford to escalate slowly. Again, the three scenarios I set out, I put out as a tweet. The second is the most likely. I see nothing that changes my mind. In terms of the percentage, I would say it's higher than 50%, but I can't say exactly how much.
Veripas, would love to get your thoughts.
Hey, how's it going, Myra? Can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
So, a couple things. Let's clear up a couple things. What we can pretty much assure is that Nasrallah is going to get on the phone tomorrow and say, we got to fight against Israel and the enemies in Axis. It's the same speech that we've probably heard 3 or 4 different times. He's just going to increase the rhetoric, say our Hamas brothers are fighting and dying. We've had Hezbollah fighters that have been killed by Israel, and it's going to escalate. Number 2, you're also seeing that, and let me clarify the Wagner story. So what the Wagner story is coming out is that nobody has intel that they've actually sent a missile battery in there. What they have is intelligence that the Wagner cargo aircraft, which is watched in everything since October 7th, has been watched by the U.S. If a goat moves across the desert, they're watching it. So they've been watching this flight, and the interesting thing that's interesting about this one flight, and it's more than one, is that they turn the transponders off. So now you're unable to track it. Well, we can track it. So we know where it came from. We know where it landed. We've also seen the Iranian flight come in and out 3 times today that have 350 seats. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, what's on the plane? Well, unless you're there, you don't really know. It went to Syria. It went to where an air defense system is. Someone has run with that story and created, Wagner's giving them a missile system. The third thing that's guaranteed is the Houthis are going to get a missile shot up their ass because they're rapidly escalating the tension in the area on now a flanked front from Israel and pulling Israel into it. So Saudi, everybody's looking at the Houthis going, what are you trying to do? So they're putting a target on themselves. So, you keep looking for Hezbollah coming in. They're in it. Now you're looking for the rapid escalation and more stuff coming in. We'll see more tit for tat. The other thing is all these seats that they've put out in this great press statement, waiting for Nasrallah, are those the fighters that just flew in? Because it's kind of coincidental at this point, and Michael will know this, Alex will know this, others, Craig will know this. When you see a plane moving that can hold 350 people and it moves 5 times throughout the day with the transponder off, what's on it? Are they filling the seats are they going to be the Iraqis? Are they going to be Iranians? Who are they going to be? So, everybody's going to just take a breath and see what he says. The escalation is there. And the other point you ask, well, does America want to destabilize? No, America will destabilize it, but also there is tension within the Department of Defense at this point with the administration, because what they're saying is, look, you want to pause for humanitarian purposes. Israel got their ass kicked on October 7th because they weren't paying attention. Is this something to draw us in? So we need to continually be ready within the region. Hence why you saw 2 B1s go to Insulet this week. Something they haven't done ever. So, what you're seeing is, no, we're ready if you guys want to do something. These regional conflicts, these little spats will continue, but the Houthis are on they're next, if not later today, it'll be within the next 3 days probably. But if they just keep their rhetoric going. So, that's kind of what it is. I would calm down with the Wagner. It's just the airplane. We're watching the airplane, and
we moved on, but Veritas, we kind of moved on from Wagner. I think the Wagner, it's like every time we move on from one thing, something bigger happens. I think the Iraqi,
Wagner.
We haven't even barely talked about it, I think, as far as I know. We haven't talked about it since after the confirmation that it was just them transporting the equipment. So I think that clarification was good. You made that clarification. But I think now what we're focusing on is obviously the Syrian militias that are moved to the southern border, the border with Israel, along with Hezbollah, the Iraqi Islamic Republic of Iraq, whatever it's called, saying they're going to escalate things next week, and then that leaked document of Iraq preparing for possibility of regional war. I think that these are, and Veritas, just briefly before we go to Heidi on that same question, likelihood of Hezbollah joining the war, and not joining, without getting to semantics, you know what I mean, like being fully involved in the war.
It's still a 50-50 at this point, but I don't think he's going to come in tomorrow and say in an hour we're going in. I think, again, it's one of these things where we're just going to have to wait and see what his rhetoric is going to be, and it's probably the same rhetoric.
So just, Harshi, are you there?
Yes.
So you're saying this alert, and I'm going to read the rest of it now for the audience. This alert is the first time since the ISIS war in 2013. This is the first time, 2013, correct?
Yeah,
the ISIS
2014, June 2014, Iraq took over 1/3 of Iraq, and Baghdad was threatened. The government was about to fall at the hand of ISIS. So.
Yeah, but what year did they put out this alert, similar alert to
2014.
this? Okay. So I want to get Harsha. I haven't asked you that question. The likelihood of with all the developments we've seen, the likelihood of Hezbollah going all in on the war.
I think, as I said, I try to tie everything to what is happening. The reason you have the U.S. and as I said, I am sure they have Israel's approval for asking for a truce. That's because they are really, they fear that it will be a total regional war. And as I said from the beginning, the red line is the destruction of Hamas. They just can't afford to lose. It's like losing one of your arms or legs. If that's the scenario, you will have Hezbollah fall in. And people say there are problems in terms of Lebanon, the economy, and whatnot. If Hamas has like 150,000, they could afford to lose even 10,000, for example. It's for them. It's politically it could revive them because, as Hadi could point out, Hezbollah did very bad in the latest elections. So politically, it serves them to get involved.
It's exactly like politically starting to make more sense now. It's a very important point. The support for Palestinians is just blowing up in around the world, but mainly in Arab countries. So from a support perspective, rallying supporters, especially at a time when Lebanon is polarized more than ever, it could actually make sense
because
now.
These groups,
it's
when
changed since the early days of the
they do really badly. They can't govern. So when they're in government, when there is peace, they lose support, as we saw in Lebanon, for example, as we, for example, saw in Iraq. But when they are involved in such an escalation or a war, not only in Lebanon, you could say in the Muslim world, people used to compare Hezbollah post 2006 war to Jamal Abdel Nasser. So it could really serve them. But as I said, it is more strategic than that. It is, Israel is at its weak point. We have to try to hurt it. We've already done it through Hamas. Let's maintain that pressure. You have a multi-pronged pressure on Israel, on U.S. allies, even Jordan feeling threatened, which has never happened before.
Okay, so let me read out the rest of the statement now, and then we'll continue to get the thoughts of the panel. So I've just edited the tweet. Let me pin the new one there. I'm going to read two statements. First, the leaked document that we've been discussing, and then the next one will be the next one will be. Sorry, I'm just reading more news. The next one will be the Islamic resistance in Iraq and their statements. I've just pinned them at the top, both of them. So we'll go back to the leaked documents. So the second part of it is much shorter. Additional instructions. Rigorous emphasis on camp security procedures, system gate, watchtowers, patrols, and strict monitoring of camp entry and exit. Stringent confirmation, follow-up, and unwavering commitment to the measures taken by units responsible for prison protection, with a zero-tolerance approach to any lapses. Intelligence services directed to A. Activate and inspect all technical surveillance resources, thermal cameras, drones, day and night surveillance, binoculars, and ensure their validity. B. Activate intelligence efforts, both technical and human, focusing on potential threats in the current and near future stages, including terrorist elements. Up-to-date information must be shared in real time. C. Aviation and oversight of all available intelligence resources in the field, with particular attention to the General Directorate of Intelligence and Security and the Directorate of Military Intelligence. The Security and Intelligence Center for Prisons must be diligently execute all assigned tasks with a heightened focus on prison security, real-time information sharing. So it's like everything that you do preparing the war. The earlier points were more significant, from deploying aircraft to air bases with enhanced security arrangement, dispersing main warehouses, ammunitions, weapons, etc., to secure locations, having activating. So establishing preparation and activation of alternative headquarters, field commanders instructed to disperse armored units. It's a full preparation for war. I've pinned it above, but just reading it and based on what I heard so far, it sounds probably one of the more serious escalations we've seen since the war started. I do want to read the statement by the Islamic resistance in Iraq. I'll just read one sentence out of it. In support of our people in Palestine and to avenge the martyrs, next week we will begin a new phase in confronting the enemies, and it will be more severe and widespread on its bases in the region. So it's referring to the US.
Now combine that.
Mario, so this
combine that with Houthis have done. Combine that Syria. Combine that with Hezbollah. You get the big picture.
Exactly. As I said, like as a joke, but I mean it. Like it's like Iran pressed the red button, not the orange button. Vladimir, war moderator, and then we'll go to Piotr. What's up, Vladimir?
So I think you missed like a very important news that Wall Street Journal had a report talking to U.S. defense officials that there was a drone a few days ago at the Erbil airport. It basically landed, it crashed into the U.S. base, but it didn't explode. So now U.S. officials officially think that Iran is actually trying to kill U.S. soldiers. So that's like something new, because before some analysts were saying that maybe Iran is just trying to scare the Americans but not actually.
Do you have? Can you send me that Wall Street Journal article, please, Vladimir?
They're trying to provoke. They're trying to provoke the United States. That's what they're trying to do.
Well, they're trying to basically provoke the United States, but also sort of push them out of the country, because if you have more U.S. deaths, then there could be a discussion in the U.S. again about why are we in Iraq, why we're in Syria, and also about the removal of the CTS commander, why it's so important. Because most of the time when there's attacks on U.S. bases, it's often the CTS that goes and check which groups are doing the attacks and try to arrest the perpetrators. So if they remove the head of the CTS service, then it becomes more difficult, basically, to stop this, basically. So if they put a more pro-Iranian head of the CTS service, then it's become easier for these resistance groups to attack the U.S. So I think that's like an interesting
And to
point.
add to that, Mario, this has not been disclosed. They actually hit one of the towers at the airport, and one of the defense systems that the U.S. sending to the Middle East is supposed to arrive in Erbil. If it has not arrived in the last couple of days, very soon.
And to Vladimir's point, which I think is very good, really quickly, look, those two things are consistent, right? The attempt to kill U.S. troops, shooting to kill, and trying to provoke a response go hand in hand. I think that makes sense to me. And again, it underscores what Vladimir is saying from that article, is underscoring the fact that, look, we really are, minutes, hours away from a possible report, God forbid, on American troops being killed. And then to Craig's point, of course, right, then the question is, what should the U.S., how should the U.S. handle that to thread the needle between not, escalating and not jumping into the war, but also defending our troops? And all, I mean, this is kind of the strategy that Iran is trying to use here to cause that sort of.
This is Michael. This is starting to look like a strategic win for Hamas, from them signing their own death sentence to causing a potential regional conflict, and a lot of attention brought to Palestine, or a small win to Hamas, but less of a loss to Hamas, but a bigger win for Iran.
Well, I think before we call winners and losers, we gotta probably have this play out for months or maybe years to really have the final say. I mean, look at Vietnam, look at all these other conflicts, right? I mean, so I don't know yet, right? Who is going to be coming out here on a strategic level? I highly doubt it'll be Hamas, but well, I guess we'll see.
I'll take it back. It'll be Iran. Hamas. Hamas is gone. Iran.
To what Senator Murphy and Durbin said, that
quickly, and then go to Tarek.
That they want Israel to change course at least, because in those intelligence briefings they've been told, look at the intelligence, this is what Iran is trying to do, and those senators realize if there is a war, it will be catastrophic for everybody.
No.
But
no, but you only have, but Tarek, you only have 2 senators out of 100 senators, right?
That was Hoshiyar, not Tarek.
Oh,
you
I'm sorry.
could see more.
Because I got away in there, Zev. It's not just 2 senators. I mean, Durbin, he's the second biggest shot in the Democratic senators.
Correct.
That you can get.
That's cover fire. He's providing cover fire for the Democrats.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what
you're doing anything.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I respect that you guys. I get it, right? Like, I understand you've got to hold the party line, and you've got to kind of squash all attempts from any side to talk
what
about
are you talking about? Hold the party line? I think that's going a little bit low, even for you to be perfectly
I'm actually a Republican.
No,
I'm actually a Republican.
So yeah, and so am I.
I mean, like, technically, well, I mean, I'm not. I'm on the conservative side, but in all honesty, I do think that he did break ranks, and like, it's because of his seniority. It actually literally will have an impact because
No, not at all.
you can't
Not at
get more
all. Not at
senior.
all. Not at all. Not at
Tobin
all.
is
He's
very
providing
senior.
cover to the left flank of Biden. All he's doing is
Yeah,
providing
of course.
cover.
Ben, you believe that Biden does not change anything with his statement, so I obviously do not believe that you will see that Duman would have any effect. But anyway, I have breaking news. Algerian parliament has officially authorized their president to enter the conflict in support to Gaza. So will we see another country joining this war? This is the question.
I can explain that vote because I was looking it up. Like,
Who's that? Sorry, who said that? So is that what is it? What is that, Hadi?
The Algerian parliament voted on a resolution that says that people are saying that's a declaration of war, but it's not like that. So what it is, it's basically saying that they authorize the government to act in any way in support of Palestine, including, if it's necessary, go into a war. But it's not like
with 100% votes.
They are all
So this is
responding to
absolutely
internal pressure, domestic pressure, popular opinion.
Yeah, in general, Algeria and people in government are always on the pro-Palestine side, so they don't need pressure to do that. Algeria has always had like strong stances against Israel, so it's only
Maybe
normal
we
for
should
them
go to
do that.
Piotr. Maybe we should go to
So
Piotr.
what is history
go.
on Flight Tracker?
Guys, I do want to go to War Monitor and Piotr. War Monitor, I know you saw I mute a couple of times. You had anything to say before we go to
I
Piotr?
didn't really have much to say. I just wanted to point out that the statement by the Islamic resistance in Iraq was also shared on the official telegram of the Lebanese Hezbollah. So it actually carries weight rather than, the many statements we hear from numerous different resistance groups in Syria and Iraq. This one is, being posted here, so it carries more weight. That's all I wanted to say.
Sure. Hadi?
Yes, I agree. If the telegram of the war media of Hezbollah posted it, that means it's legit and they do adopt the claims.
I think I sent you guys the link to it.
So hold on. So has reposted. So Hezbollah has reposted this statement by the Islamic resistance in Iraq.
Yeah, but not
which
not
means
just
what exactly?
reposted. They didn't forward it from one telegram to another. They posted it as its own post on their telegram.
It means
Wait,
there
War
is
Monitor, can I
coordination,
clarify what
Mario,
you
and at the same time,
can I clarify what you mean, War Monitor? Sorry, I've been listening for a while. I want to clarify that. So wait, you're saying that
there's a Telegram channel that's run
yeah.
by
Can I just
Hezbollah.
clarify what Monitor said? So you're saying that the document that was released by the Iraqis of the precautionary movements.
No.
Which one are you talking about? I'm
the Islamic. So just if you look at the
jihadi
pin,
group. Okay.
Yeah, the second pin tweet. There's two of them, not the Iraqi one. The Islamic resistance in Iraq saying they're going to escalate attacks on the US.
Okay.
So Hezbollah has
That's
also
different.
reposted. So has also posted the statement. So what does that mean exactly? I just want to understand what it means.
it means they are.
It gives it more weight, but can you elaborate?
Yeah, exactly.
They are
It gives it
working
more
together.
legitimacy and weight overall compared to other statements said by other groups. Because there's a lot of
Each
statements
of
said
these
every day.
channels, yeah, they have their own channels. Like there's groups for each one. Like the Palestinian Ministry of Health, they post their updates on a Telegram channel. Like they're not using their Twitter or anything. So people are using Telegram to kind of put out their official statements.
Okay, so this kind of acts as an endorsement of this
Yes,
move?
It says that we are in coordination. It says that we are not just fighting by ourselves. And, there is that coordination, that plan that we talked about. I think it was Ali Hashim who said, whatever Hezbollah is doing seems very planned and deliberate. And
This is essentially the axis of resistance coordinating together based on Iran's.
Yeah, because
I do believe though that this.
I would
Go ahead,
veer off
Piotr.
saying based on Iran's. Yeah, I might actually say a few things now.
It's not a coordination channel. It's just
I wouldn't
it's just
say
like a
it was
broadcast
based
channel.
on. Yeah. Okay. So point one. This is an illustration of cross-border collaboration, but I would draw a line at saying that it's been endorsed or suggested by the Iranians. I would not go that far. Don't forget.
Hold on, Piotr. But why? You've got
because
multiple
there's no
Iranian
evidence to
proxies.
suggest that.
Yeah, but I know you can't know for sure. You can say, but everything we say has no evidence. But if you just connect the dots, so you got all the proxies coordinating together within a 6-hour period. You've got the attacks on the base. You've got the Iraqi one, the Iraqi group sending out a missile to the Dead Sea and targeting Israel for the first time from Iraqi territory since 1990s. You've got the Hezbollah and the statement tomorrow, all the trailers, and then reposting the Iraqi statement as well, all of that happening, along with the statements by Iranian, I can't remember which, we were trying to figure out who they were earlier when you were there. We're trying to figure out who they were and saying that be ready for a surprise, something along those lines. 100%, we can't be certain for sure. We're obviously speculating as always, but connecting all those dots, I think it's fair to say that it's a possibility, or at least a high probability, that they're all acting on behalf of Iran, unless they're all coordinating independently. But I'd be surprised for all these proxies to make those decisions independent of Iran. Hold on, Heidi. Hold on, guys. Hold on, Habiba. Yeah, Hala, 2 seconds. Yeah, Piotr, go ahead, then we'll go to Hala and Heidi.
Yeah, so I want to say a few points to what was discussed a while, because I've been waiting. Sure, you could say there is a high probability that the Iranians are encouraging the coordination between these groups. But unless there is absolute circumstantial evidence to suggest that the Islamic Republic, the IRGC, or someone else is behind the coordination of everything, I'm still going to say I don't believe that the Iranians are directly coordinating this. Because for one singular reason, which is that the Iranians know if they push Hezbollah, the Islamic Jihad group in Palestine, or any of these other proxies to get directly more involved, and that leads to a unnecessary high casualty rate of Americans or Israelis, they know that that will lead to direct confrontation with both the Israelis and the Americans, and possibly the British and everybody else, because they know that the Iranians are coordinating all of this. So the Iranians are pushing I'm not denying the Iranians are pushing the absolute envelope when they are making this cross coordination, but there's still a level of ambiguity that the Iranians are trying to portray by going around shuttle diplomacy with diplomatic statements and all this sort of like, we don't want war, we don't want direct confrontation, we don't like Israel, we don't like X, Y, and Z, but we don't want to directly engage with you. So personally, I still don't think we can confidently enough say near possibility or near probability is not a near certainty or 100%. So for me, I'm going to be cautious and say I'm still not sure about that. As for the statement by the actual Iraqi government, as soon as I saw the word precautionary, lost immediate amount of scare, because it is precautionary. It's like the NATO troops building up eastern borders with Russia and Ukraine early last year, because it's precautionary. You conduct exercises. So I still don't think that the Iraqi government is expecting. I mean, 2014, sure, the statement is not good to hear that, but it's not ISIS because it's not directly on their border. It's hundreds of miles away. So what's happening is what we said several times during the past month, which is that this event is causing pockets of areas of instability, fragility to stir up, because now people see chaos, and where you see chaos, you see opportunists wanting to exploit their respective interests. When we talk about potential troops that are killed, American troops that are killed, what happened to the 24 casualties that were injured, a week ago? Did we see any major escalation by the United States? Not really. So I don't think that the Americans would escalate that much higher. And then as for the Wagner Group, just very quickly, the Wagner Group are doing this everywhere. They're not going to do anything else. Sending equipment, yeah, it's not good, but the Russians are doing this all the time, and it builds into the broader point that I'm trying to make constantly, which is that there are opportunists, there are actors that are covertly, tacitly, Iran, Russia, China, even they're all doing this. The Americans are doing it with the Israelis in some ways, right? So I think we should take a.
No, I think the involvement. No, but the involvement of Wagner is not the concerning thing. It's like the caliber of the caliber of the weapon that was transferred to Hezbollah, and we had Colonel Jeff talk about it before.
That's fair enough. That's quite an advanced weapon, yeah. So yeah. And also I just wanted to say that Alex, I think, phrased it really well. Alex, who's not here anymore, but Atlantic Group Alex, he said it really well, which was that there is the concern I have is the coincidentality. So the timing. So to what Habib has said, War Monitor. Well, the reason I unmuted when War Monitor spoke was because that statement was particularly interesting, right? Hadi has made it very clear that Hezbollah are very, very official, if you like, formal in how they release their updates if they're going to do something. And the fact that they've released this on their channel, that does make me concerned. That's the thing that I heard out of everything that made me actually sit up and be like, oh, that's not good. So there could be a cross-coordinated attack. But I still remain on the fence about how much Iran will try and.
So with the statement of the Islamic Republic of Islamic Resistance in Iraq, they included the cruise missile. Does that indicate that the cruise missiles will be used on the attacks on U.S. air bases if they included it with the statement?
I mean, I would defer to one of the Iraqi experts, but if from my just understanding of great power grand strategy of that level, if you use a certain piece of equipment like that, that is a total different calculus for the American government, because a cruise missile is a bit different to sort of, you know, arbitrary shelling or drone strikes or something. That is heavyweight kind of like equipment, artillery being used. I don't know if Michael has any thoughts on that, but yeah, that's that. That's
there hasn't been any cruise missiles. Hold on, there hasn't been any cruise missiles launched against.
Not today.
So is it better now?
Your mic's like rubbing. I thought it was me, but your mic's really like buzzy. It sounds like a bee or something.
Is it better? How about now? Is it better?
No.
I'll fix it later, but just give me one question before I fix it. So but there hasn't been any cruise missiles launched on U.S. bases, correct?
No,
Mario, you don't need cruise missiles to target U.S. bases, because the distance is not that far. You will need cruise missiles for two things: either target Israel directly, or hit oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. And you don't need.
It's the size of the warhead. It's the size of the warhead that makes the difference. Really, at the end of the day, it's the size of the warhead.
And to Piotr's point, it would be really stupid to try to hit U.S. bases with cruise missiles, because guess what? You've just now justified the U.S. sending a whole lot back more your way. And so I think to some extent, like we've already talked about, and I don't want to belabor it, there is this very, very, very precise strategy here from Iran where they can use certain capabilities to poke and prod and possibly to kill Americans, which I do think is the intent there, without sort of bringing too much to bear. And I think we've already talked to death on what, how the U.S. responds in that moment is very critical. I think, I agree with most of what Piotr said. The one thing I'd push back on is the reason that there hasn't been a bigger U.S. response to this point is that no American service members, so members of the military, have been killed. Zero to this point.
Is that the case, Michael?
As far as bases in Iraq and Syria, yeah. Unless you have other, I haven't seen anything to indicate otherwise.
No,
just to be clear, Michael, I said casualties, not deaths.
Right,
yeah.
but again,
the U.S. contractor killed though.
Right, but again, surely, Piotr, you understand how to the U.S., right, dead American troops is a higher bar for a response than wounded American troops. I think all or most of which have actually returned to service. There were some brain injuries or things like that which were diagnosed. But again,
Michael, let me reorientate this to you with a question then. To what extent would the Americans actually go full hog into this? Would they, I saw it, I try and bring up the map, right? But based on the current amount of carrier strike groups and maritime presence the US has across the region, let alone the ground forces, which I know is a fraction of what it was, but the Americans could blanket basically all of the Middle East in missile barrages if they wanted to. What is the red line? What is one of the? There's obviously different levels of red line. But what's the lowest red line?
Ask to Iran too. Like, what is the limit where Israel can't cross before?
No, I get that, Tariq, but I'm just speaking specifically on the United States in the context of if the Iraqis launch cruise missiles, not the Iraqi government, but these.
I can answer that.
What do you think?
I can answer that. It's what the carriers are there to do are not to deter fanatics from doing what fanatics do, and that's put their lives in danger for their fanatical beliefs. They're there to deter nation-state action, direct nation-state action. They are not there to deter the Houthis, because the Houthis don't care if they die. They're not there to deter Hezbollah, because obviously Hezbollah doesn't care if they die. Hamas doesn't care if they all get wiped out, because they provoked a war with Israel. These people don't care if they die. It's like trying to say, I'm going to deter Al-Qaeda. You're not going to deter Al-Qaeda. All they want to do is drag part of Al-Qaeda's desire. Everybody knows this now. Part of Al-Qaeda's desire was to drag the United States into a ground war in the Middle East. That was their fundamental goal of what they did. We stepped into that sandbox and we messed up.
So the mandate is to generally only strike nation states, nothing to do with NSAs.
No. You misunderstand. No. You misunderstand. Okay. You can't conflate carrier battle groups deterring any fanatics. A fanatic, listen, if that was the case, they wouldn't have flown planes into the tower, right? They don't care, right? They're there to deter nation-state action, direct nation-state action. That is Iran, IRGC, directly getting involved in this. They're there to deter Syria, possibly from getting involved. They're not there to deter fanatics that don't care about escalation. That's why.
So that's why we didn't see a response by the Israelis to the apparent, Houthi declaration of war. Which
what difference? What difference would that make to Israel? It's not like they have the Israeli Air Force has 700 planes. What are they going to do? Start launching, refueling operations over Saudi Arabia to attack them?
Guys, can you hear me?
It's really bad, buddy. It's still really bad.
Yeah. Okay. I'll change. Okay, I'm changing my mic now. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that the threshold to American the threshold to American response is nation state action. You can have a Tomahawk, you can have a B-1 bomber. All that is to ensure that Israel has the political and, quite frankly, the military kinetic room to do what it wants to do, which is to destroy Hamas.
And so just on this exchange, and then I'll pass back to Tarek. Are there different levels of retaliation, right? So you send a few certain types of missiles, or you send a bunch of Tomahawks, or you unleash everything. Like, what are the parameters on that?
Yeah. So what you would look at, so there's obviously an escalation ladder of these operations. Number one, you don't target the operator, you target the group leader. So you run that to ground and you target the specific group leader that was running that operation. The United States can find out who that is. It's not that hard, right? These people have stuff that's run through Radio Shack, so they can find out that sort of stuff. The escalation ladder after that is direct. You have these embedded units. Everybody knows this. This is not like a state secret. Everybody knows that there are embedded IRGC units into these Shia militias all across the Middle East. That is the next step up the ladder, is targeting those embedded IRGC commanders or control operators in that unit that attacked. Up from that, you're then striking possibly Syrian government national units that are transporting things that are going to hit Israel, right? Israel's not afraid to hit Damascus. Israel's not afraid to hit an airport. Up from that, it becomes nation state on nation state. But to a certain point, Iran doesn't want that, because they understand that if that line was crossed, everybody in the Middle East has to choose. Is it Iran?
I still maintain that both the United States and Iran do not want direct military
100%.
involvement in a wider
100%.
conflict. And just to underscore part of what Craig said, I don't think that the U.S. would respond to these attacks on U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria with some kind of massive, overwhelming barrage, or to target sites in Iran or whatever.
But Michael, would Iran want to risk its valuable asset, Hezbollah in Lebanon, by actually pushing Hezbollah to get into the
But that would hold
yes.
on one second. But hold on. What the premise? Wait. You have to address the premise of that question. The premise of that question is: does Israel want to go in and destroy Hezbollah? That's the premise of your question. And Israel has said that their goal is to destroy Hamas. If Hezbollah gets involved, Israel does not have the casus belli.
But we heard other reports that said.
But to answer your question,
after Hamas, the second target is Hezbollah, and we heard this from Israeli officials, and this answers your question. So, and again, going back to my initial question, does Iran want to get rid of its valuable asset Hezbollah in Lebanon by pushing it to get involved into the conflict?
I'm inclined to say no, and I feel like Hezbollah has been much more valuable to Iran over many years than its relationship with Hamas, which has been shorter term and more limited in some ways. And so I feel like, again, as we've talked about before, and I've said this in previous spaces as well, I think if it comes down to it, I think Iran would decide to sort of cut Hamas loose if it meant not having to commit Hezbollah or other proxies and potentially lose more of them, right? So that's part of, I think, the strategic calculus for Iran that is important right now. They have to be thinking about, again, the topic of the day has been, Hezbollah and will they, won't they, and Nasrallah's speech tomorrow. But I think even then, it definitely, there are going to be consultations back and forth between Hezbollah and Iran on why or how or when that involvement would occur. And I don't, again, I'm kind of 50-50, but I don't know.
So Michael, just to tag on to that,
Piotr, just before commenting on that, I'd like to thank Jackson for having the time to jump on our space. Thank you, Jackson. I would like to know more about your thoughts on what's happening in the region, and what would the consequences be then?
It's mainly so Jackson, just the latest update to give you an idea. So we've got the Hezbollah is making the speech tomorrow in Australia, which you probably know. There's been sources that said that Iran, and this would be a good overview for the audience. So 2 days ago, I posted where different sources said that Iran and Hezbollah put out a warning to the US that if there's no ceasefire or truce or something along those lines by Friday noon, Hezbollah will be joining the war. So it's not public, and obviously it's not confirmed 100%. And then we have the teaser that Hezbollah put out a few days ago. First time they put out a teaser for a speech. We have the Islamic Resistance of Iraq. They shot, I think it was a drone to the Dead Sea. First time they target Israel. They've also declared, they didn't declare war, they declared that they're going to escalate their attacks as of next week. Hezbollah reposted that statement, kind of endorsing it, shows coordination. And we also have the Iraqi leak of their military going on alert. Essentially, the first time this happened since the war on ISIS. And then on the Hezbollah front again, we do have the delivery, Wagner's delivering a missile defense system from Bashar al-Assad, from Syria to Hezbollah, a pretty advanced one, a very advanced one. Piotr and Colonel Jeff were talking about it earlier. And lastly, we've got reports, and the IDF stated it as well, that we've got thousands of militia members from Syria, I can't remember the group's name, that already arrived apparently to southern border of Lebanon, or just Lebanon in general, to support Hezbollah, and tens of thousands in the Golan Heights on the border between Syria and Lebanon. So it's got all these points, all the escalations that are pointing to either a stern warning tomorrow by Hezbollah, or Hezbollah potentially joining the war tomorrow if that warning is true. Now, there's behind the scenes a lot of discussions of some sort of truce they're trying to get, could be linked to that threat made by Iran and Hezbollah. I kind of giving you a bit of context what we've been covering to get to link to Tarek's question.
Yeah, I think that the point about Nasrallah's speech tomorrow, I'd be surprised if they decide to formally start a second front. I think, and who knows, it could happen, but I'd be surprised. I think if Hezbollah is anything like what Hamas did, which who knows, their command, their strategy going into this, it would make more sense for them to keep doing these little speeches and freaking out the Israelis and getting, I think the temporary ceasefire that might be announced is probably related to his speech tomorrow. And then, keep doing these speeches and then eventually launch a surprise attack on Israel and do a second front when they start moving forward on Gaza City. But who knows, anything could happen. I joined to speak because this Craig fellow was talking about how the U.S. needs to do this and the U.S. needs to do that, and against these, what he called Iranian proxies. It's like, no, what the U.S. needs to do is get the hell out, stop funding Israel, stop funding these proxy wars, stop meddling in the Middle East, stop meddling in Ukraine, stop meddling all across the world, stop the funding of these proxy wars. That's what the U.S. needs to do right now. And I'll mention also, there was some news that just broke. The U.S. House just voted $14.3 billion to Israel. We should be giving a grand total of, I think, personally, I'm a little bit biased, but I think a grand total of $0 to Israel would be preferable. And, focus all that money on fixing our country. Why is it that we're funding these terrorists who've killed probably north of 10,000 civilians in Gaza over the past 3 weeks? It's insane. So I think as for Nasrallah, probably unlikely that tomorrow will be an official announcement. The Syrian transfer of the missile system was interesting. We have, I guess, has that been confirmed by the Syrian government yet?
No, not the Syrian government. So that was mentioned by Wall Street Journal, put out a piece, and then we had, what's the other source, guys? Do you remember? So we had someone else mention it, that it was the Syrian government. Hasn't been confirmed by them, nor Hezbollah. I wouldn't expect them to confirm. And then I think it was the US. Who confirmed it? Tarek, do you remember who confirmed it? Because we had another report come out later. I think it was US report. It wasn't the IDF. We're aware. Yeah. US said that we're aware of... I think they confirmed that they were aware of movements by Wagner. Yeah. I'll have to check the tweets again.
The Pentagon have stated that they are aware, but they have no confirmations.
No, there's a statement after that one, I think. But yeah, so it's not 100%, but everything's happening in the last 10 hours.
Yeah. So we all know where Assad's sympathies lie, I guess, in this war. But I guess it is interesting to see it's only been confirmed by the Pentagon and Wall Street Journal as of now, supposedly. But I think, I guess I'll just reiterate, $0 to Israel and all of this mess would go away. They'd figure out how to govern themselves. Israel wouldn't survive 3 weeks if the U.S. turned off the tap for all of the funds that we sent. I mean, maybe they'd survive 3 weeks right now because we've given them so many billions for decades, but Israel would not survive much longer if we turned off the tap, and that's exactly what we need to do.
I've got
So,
another.
no,
Go ahead, Craig.
Mario.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah. Okay. So, number one, the U.S. should
Oh, sorry,
stop.
Craig. What I want. Sorry, I realized I want to jump in. Just so for the audience, FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried has been found guilty. That came in while Andrew was speaking. Sorry, Jackson was speaking.
That's
So-
beautiful.
So
That brings
wait
back
till
memories,
you see the
doesn't
sentencing phase. Wait till you see the
it?
sentencing phase.
So
When do we
what
see the sentencing? Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
No,
go
I
ahead.
said wait until you see it.
Yeah. So
Go,
so
Craig.
let's address this in order, right? What has been asserted is that the U.S. should stop funding its proxies in the Middle East. Okay. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So Iran should stop funding its proxies in the Middle East as well. So you have to call a spade, right? So if the U.S. is going to stop funding, then Iran should stop funding. But I don't see you calling for Iran to stop funding their proxies. So that's number one. Number two, the money that has been spent in Ukraine. Let's address that one at a time. The United States is sending material that has an assigned dollar value. So let's just call that 1,000 Javelin missiles have an assigned dollar value at, say, $100 million. That has already been spent. Those Javelin missiles exist, right? Those artillery shells exist, right? They're not actually costing anything because it's a material thing that has an assigned dollar value. So help them.
Craig, you've just dropped. Oh, you're back.
Yeah. So we're gonna take. So the argument goes, and it's a failed argument, I might add, that we're gonna take $100 million worth of artillery shells and somehow use that to build roads in America is straining credulity and reality at the very least, right? In fact, it's flying in the face of reality because those 100,000 millions of shells that are sent there already exist. So they don't go to fund the United States infrastructure or United States interests in terms of our own domestic concerns. That's number one. Number two, if we want the United States to stop meddling in world affairs, okay, fine. The United States pulls back, right? Pulls back from a strategic posture that exists currently right now. Let's address what will happen. Russia will then completely and utterly invade the rest of Europe and start a major ground war in Europe. That does not signal to me a peace-loving nation. It has already signaled that the Baltic nations are Russian provinces. It has signaled that Ukraine belongs to Russia. That is not in the United States' interest to surrender Europe. So unless you are actually against American interests, you're not cheering for Russia. That's number one. Number two, China is the one that is asserting an aggressive, illegal posture in the Indo-Pacific in terms of the 9-dash line. That has been repudiated.
But Craig, Trump
One second,
has
please.
Trump
One
has
second,
an
please.
opposing opinion
One
to what
second,
you
please.
just said.
Hold on, Tyra. Hold on. Let him
please.
finish, please.
China is instituting a 9-dash line in the Southern Pacific that has been ruled illegal by the International Court. It is also illegal considering that Vietnam, the nation that we were at war with for 7 years, has said that they do not approve of what China is doing, and in fact, they are willing to respond militarily if pushed. That is a communist nation that we were at war with for 7 years that is supporting the American position. So if we want to talk about who's destabilizing the world, it is those that seek to undermine the rules-based order that we all, including yourself, Jackson, observe. Because guess what? You can complain that you are censored. You can complain that you are held against your will and all the rest of it. But here you are talking with the freedom of speech and the blanket of freedom that the United States has provided, talking bad about the same system that provides you the ability to speak freely. When if you go to Russia, how many peace protests are allowed in Russia? How many people did Russia lock up when the Ukraine war started? How many people did they throw in jail? How many journalists have been assassinated? How many times in China do you see free speech walking through the streets that you can hear in the United States of America? You can get together with a group of people, get a permit for a protest, and you can say whatever you want. You can say death to the Jews, death to the Israelis, and nobody's going to lock you up. But if you go to China and you say the Communist Party is illegal, you get locked up or you get murdered or assassinated. Same thing happens in Iran. There's no free speech protests in Iran. So what you're advocating for is the destruction of your own ability to speak freely, which may be what you actually want. Everybody else be quiet and listen to Jackson. That is not the freedom of speech that we should enjoy in this world. And if you are against that, I will conclude with this. And there he goes. If you are against that, then you are not a freedom-loving American. You are anti-American,
Craig.
and you are wannabe dictator.
Could I respond
Yeah, I
instead
think
of
I think it's
Jackson?
up
Correct.
to.
And yet, you know, people have been stopped from doing
Is someone speaking?
talks. Employees that have, you know, said anything pro-Palestinian. We're not talking even Hamas.
That's a
Have been
private market.
have been
That's a
fired.
private
Hold on.
market
Just
decision.
wait. Craig,
That's a
one
private
minute. Wait,
market
hala,
decision, not a
Protesting,
governmental
and
decision.
you're talking to us about freedom of speech. Seriously, I mean, you may
hala,
not be doing it.
Are
You may
you
not be
kidding
doing
me?
it
How much freedom of
blatantly, but
speech is
you
in
are.
Iran, Russia, and China?
Craig.
Give me
Okay,
a
gentlemen.
break.
Okay, just one thing, hala. That's a private business decision. Of course, everyone has a First Amendment right, but free speech is not free speech without consequence. Those are private internal decisions that are made, right? Just as a Palestinian business is free to basically terminate somebody if one of their employees does not like what they say. I mean, let's just be very candid. That might not be constitutionally sound if a lawsuit was filed, but that is basically the de facto law of the land.
I'd
And
like
not
to.
to mention that the same person who accused me of doing something ran away when he was confronted with the truth.
No, I'd like to respond. I'd like to respond,
He
Craig.
didn't run away.
Guys,
If I may.
guys, just we've kind of moved away from all the developers. I know we had a good debate going on, but just on the developers that are happening, I do want to go to for us. I know you want to comment on this, but in a bit, I do want to go back to War Monitor and Hadi because we haven't heard their thoughts. Guys, we've heard all the developments. I kind of gave a recap about it earlier. Where do you stand? We'll go to Hadi now. Hadi, you've been covering the developments with Hezbollah, which you've studied for many years, since the beginning of this war. Where do you stand now after everything we've seen, from the speech, the trailer, the potential, all the reports from the missile defense system, to the thousands of troops and tens of thousands on the border, to what happened in Iraq, both the government and the Islamic resistance? Your thoughts?
Right. So I'm gonna start with Nasrallah's speech tomorrow. I just want to say that tomorrow there's gonna be no way. Like I said, it might surprise us, but for me, there's gonna be no way an indication of if they're gonna actually join the war now or not. That's not gonna happen. He's gonna talk about their successes on the borders. He's gonna talk about the resistance in Gaza. He's gonna talk about some red lines. He's gonna talk about, of course, the American warships that are on the shores. He's gonna mention that. I feel 100%. That's what's gonna happen. He's gonna focus more on the fallen Hezbollah soldiers and their families and send them a message and all that, because that's the event. What's it about? So I wouldn't give it too much because there's a lot of expectations of him declaring a war tomorrow by a lot of people on this app, which is not true. Regarding what's happening with Iraq and all these resistance, this is the problem. I'm not criticizing anyone. You all have the right to say whatever you want about anyone. You can call them proxies. You can call them. It's your freedom. You say whatever. But this is, from my perspective, the problem of calling them proxies, because that's when you just analyze. Okay, Iran gave the order, do that, or Iran said that, do that. This is wrong. What's happening there is they're sitting on the same table, they are coordinating together, and they are planning what's going to happen, because if something happens, they need the backing of their other allies. This is why you see this sort of coordination where it seems like Iran just gave the order. From my perspective and a lot of people's perspective, this is not Iranian order. This is a coordination with Iran and the other axis of resistance, the other groups, the other parties, call them whatever. This is what's happening right now. And of course, there's a what do you call it, dimension to it, where it's a message sent to America and Israel and their allies in the region. And there's another dimension to say that they are prepared. They know that the escalation might happen, and they are prepared, and they're showing the reach where they can. For example, the Iraqis showed that they can reach their missiles to Israel. Hezbollah is doing that by weakening the fronts against Gaza by sending more troops to the north. So each side is doing one thing, but they're all on the same table coordinating. So that's my personal perspective.
I appreciate that.
I would like
I do. Yeah, just. Yeah. So, by the way, Craig, I'd be surprised Jackson just runs away from a debate. He thrives in debates. Jackson, I'll let you respond to Craig. I think you dropped out earlier.
Jackson, yeah, I had an issue, but I just have this to say, and then I got to go. But so I might be back later. We'll see. But so Craig blew out a lot of hot air in that statement. I didn't hear all of it, but I heard most of it. And I guess I'll just start by saying that so first of all, the money, he claimed that the money was like, oh, you know, the shells, the javelins, they're already made, and we already have. Okay, I'm no fan of the IRS, and I want to defund the IRS, but the money came from the IRS. So for starters, I mean that's just ludicrous saying that, like, oh, the money's just non-existent. It's already It's already been, allocated. Okay, well, even if let's just take his phony argument at face value. Let's just say the money was already it was allocated for those shells or those javelins or whatever they're sending to Israel. And by the way, I'd imagine it's not just all javelins or shells. It's $14 billion. That's a lot of money. Probably a lot of that is going to be just like...
It's 76 billion, to be correct.
I saw 14.3 billion.
Agree to disagree.
What do you mean?
He's talking about the bill that was passed today, Craig, not the overall.
Oh, you're talking about Israel. I thought you were talking about... Sorry, he went to Ukraine and Israel without a correct transition. I got it now. Thanks.
No, you just weren't listening. So it was $14.3 billion. And I think that, anyways, what... God, this is so stupid. Okay, so I think that at the end of the day, this money was taken from the IRS and it's being sent over, whatever. But let's just take your argument at face value. Say the shells have already been allocated for whatever. Okay, let's use those weapons. Let's use those javelins. Let's use all missile defense systems, whatever, AD systems. Let's use that to protect America. Let's not use that to send it to Israel to go start a proxy conflict. As an American patriot, I personally am of the belief that, and I'm not joking when I say this, I think that we should liberate Canada. So I think it would make a lot more sense to just, take part of Canada or all of Canada, really. Maybe we leave Quebec and we take it all. And I mean, you're going to need some javelins and some AD systems to do that. So I think it would be much more within the interests of America if we finish the Manifest Destiny ideal.
Why not Mexico? Why not Mexico?
Well, Mexico are good neighbors. I like them. And, Manifest Destiny.
But they're letting all the illegal immigrants in. But they're letting all the illegal immigrants in. They're letting all the illegal immigrants in.
No, Joe Biden's doing that. But Manifest Destiny are...
But that's Mexico. Come on, man. We got to be American. Come on, bro. We got to fight for America.
Back and forth.
Okay, but our founding
Can we stay on the Middle East?
Our founding fathers believed in Manifest Destiny, and that was also incorporating Canada into the United States. So I think we should liberate Canada. We shouldn't be giving that money to Israel or those weapons to Israel, as you said. And I would like to stay on the Middle East too. You went off on some tangent about how China and Russia or something are breaking international law or threatening to break international law. I find it so funny that one of the largest pro-Israel, pro-U.S. government propagandists in this space is now whining and crying about, respecting international law. But what's clear is that China and Russia are the only, major governments on the face of the earth that are at least trying to adhere to the UN Charter. The U.S. uses that for toilet paper, basically.
By illegally invading another country?
Well, I think we should stick to the Middle East.
So I prefer with the developers that we've seen now.
Just saying.
Let's not get sidetracked on what China's doing with Taiwan.
So I think that's all I'll say.
Let's try and stay in lane.
Craig, if you want to respond, but I do have to go soon.
Yeah, so it'll be short and sweet. So all I will simply say is that if you want to defend the United States, the primary line of defense, as and always will be, the United States Navy. The United States Navy is and always will be, again, the primary line of defense of the United States. A Javelin missile is not going to defend the United States because the nearest shore is thousands of miles away. So a Javelin missile is not really going to do a whole lot, right? It's going to be an aircraft carrier battle group, of which we have 11, including a nuclear deterrent. So I think you need to go back to strategy school if you're talking about defending the United States. It's the United States Navy that does it, not a Javelin.
I mean, I agree. We've got the best Navy in the boat, but what is the I guess the imperative of a U.S. citizen, like your average Joe? He's eating McDonald's on a Friday night in Kentucky. Why does he care if we have how does it positively impact that? Wait, let me just finish. How does it positively impact that man and his family if the U.S. sends 2, carrier strike groups to the Eastern Mediterranean in the midst of a proxy war with the Arab world?
That's a great question. That is a fantastic question because I am a blue collar worker. I actually had McDonald's today, so I can tell you for a fact that if you're thinking of both macro and micro, it helps that man for one simple reason, that is cost. If you look around the world, you will see countries that do not have the ability to control their own destinies in terms of trade, in terms of politics, and in terms of relationships. The United States is able to import a large degree of their goods and services, of which you're using one, probably an iPhone, right? That has a good cost benefit because of the power of the United States Navy and its allied groups. If you lose control of the oceans and you lose control of your alliances, then you lose control of your ability to command your own destiny as a nation. So either you're for America choosing its own future, or you're for others telling Americans how they should live and dictating the cost of goods that we use in our daily life. I prefer the latter, not the former.
I'll just say, short and sweet as well, I prefer that, we have low cost, well-made goods made in America, and we don't outsource all of our jobs to other countries.
I agree that. I
and
agree.
then on top of that, the United. Okay, let's take your argument. You said that we control trade routes and whatnot. Well, I mean, kind of. We control trade routes because if we ever threaten to start a war or proxy war, insurance companies aren't going to provide trade to major shippers, and they're not going to be able to ship basic goods like oil or LNG or anything like that. That was the reigning theory up until the Russia-Ukraine war, and then we saw that theory go out the window, and oil needed to be shipped, gas needed to be shipped, and that no longer applies. But what we found out is that if the United States, who refuses for some crazy climate conspiracy reason, if they refuse to drill for their own oil and drill for their own gas and frack and whatnot and everything that they have to do, and they say, well, we're going to rely on our partners, but we're going to negotiate fair and low prices with the major oil and gas producing nations of the world to get our products. That doesn't really, your argument doesn't stand up against that, because if we piss off all of the major oil producing nations on the world, which, by the way, 6 of the 10 top oil producing countries in the world are BRICS member states, if we piss them all off, then they're not going to want to do business and fair and cheap business with us. And we've already seen that with Saudi Arabia.
So I want to jump in here for a second.
Well,
you said quite a few points.
I'll just say one last thing. Saudi Arabia is dicking around with us right now on oil prices because we pissed them off so much. So you're pissing people off via proxy warfare actually doesn't help the U.S.
Can I just say one thing, Pierre? 1 second.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to say something. I just want to say something quite clearly. Right, the people who live in the United States enjoy the single best standard of living in the world. Is it perfect? No. But relative to everybody else, it's the best. Okay. That is because of the system of alliances and the world-based order that we have built up after World War II to ensure that free trade exists between nations that allow themselves to engage in economic affairs according to their own national self-interest. Same thing that Adam Smith offered in The Wealth of Nations. I will simply conclude with this and leave it to everybody else.
So what I would just like to do,
if you are interested in a strong, democratic, and free country, if you believe that in your heart, forget about political arguments, forget about everything else, in your heart, if you believe that people should worship freely, if you believe that people should speak freely, if you believe that people should have the right to determine their representative government and their budget, then you do not want a weak America. You want a strong Russia, a strong China, because neither of those two countries, and Iran, neither of those 3 countries believe in freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of choosing your own leadership. If you don't believe in those things, then you support that axis. If you do believe in them, the United States is and always will be the last best hope for free.
So I want to jump in because, thanks, Benjamin. We're talking big picture, and this is definitely my area of love. And I also wanted to chime in because I think we've got 2 very different American perspectives, and I think it's quite interesting back and forth. But just a couple of things. So what Craig is talking about is the right to self-determination, be that an expression, freedom of rights, economic, whatever it's civil, economic, and so on. Now, I don't disagree with the increasing weaponization that the United States makes of the dollar. It is a problem. It is a controversial thing, and it puts a lot of countries' backs up. However, I think we should also keep in mind that the Chinese aren't free of their own weaponization. And when you have half a dozen states which are angered by the 9-dash line, just to use Craig's example, that's, the Philippines, that is Vietnam, that is Cambodia, that is Malaysia, that is Indonesia, Brunei. These are countries that have a lot of tensions with China. And a good example of where another country feels about this issue is India. India is a strategically autonomous country. It doesn't want to be left. It doesn't want to be right. It doesn't want to be anywhere either. But it is being pushed by China to the United States, despite the US having spent decades trying to pull the Indians into their partnership/alliance network. So I think we are experiencing a period where the United States is being challenged, absolutely, 100%. But I don't think we should lose sight of the issues that the Chinese and the Russians have, and say that they are the best thing since sliced bread. I think we need to be able to recognize the limitations and strengths of both sides. I personally do agree with Craig on one particular fundamental point, and I know, Mario, you've unmuted, so you want to bring the discussion back to the Middle East, which is that I am not aware of the ability to express myself in the Russian or Chinese states. In America, I can say Biden's a bit of a Dumbo and not fear for my life. And for me, that is a big distinction. But anyway, this is a big discussion, and I think we should move back to Middle East.
Jackson, I'll let you respond, but also a question I have for you, Jackson. Where do you see, especially with the developments we've seen over the last 48 hours, like last time you were here, first time you came on, the whole concept of Hezbollah joining is like, yeah, unlikely, but now that sentiment seems to be shifting for everyone. Last three panelists I asked, I think Alex, Piotr, no, I didn't ask Piotr yet, Alex, Craig, Colonel, and they were at 50-50, and before they were most likely they're not going to join. Hezbollah joining will increase the likelihood this becomes a regional conflict, if not guarantee it will become a regional conflict.
I've got a question, for Jackson after you as well.
Sure. So my question for you, Jackson, is where do you see this war in the next 3 to 6 months?
In 3 to 6 months, well, it all depends on whether or not other states get involved. If Hezbollah doesn't get involved and no one else does, then it's probably going to be over in, I'd say, 4 to 6 months. That's a guess. I've been wrong before. I could be wrong again about things. If as for Hezbollah tomorrow announcing intervention, unlikely, but it could happen, but unlikely. You said your other guests are 50-50. I guess I'm at 70% unlikely. But I do think it's 50-50 that it could happen at some point before this wraps up. But tomorrow, probably unlikely. Yes. As for one last thing, the state...
Why precisely for tomorrow not?
Because I think it would make... I think there's multiple factors. I think it's very possible that Nasrallah even has 2 speeches on his desk right now, and he doesn't know which one he's going to give based on what Israel does with this. We saw news earlier, a potential temporary ceasefire. But I think it would make more sense strategically if Nasrallah kept doing these little speeches to fake out the Israelis and then eventually at some point launches a semi-surprise attack. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know anything about Hezbollah's military strategy and whether or not they do a surprise attack like that. But I think the other side is, why do I think they'll do it if Israel continues to go into Gaza? Because Nasrallah is going to be very unpopular amongst his base if he doesn't do it. That's understandable. Why do I think not tomorrow also? Because I saw OSINT Defender share an interesting letter, which has been confirmed from, I think it was from Hezbollah leadership, maybe even Nasrallah himself, to an open letter to the people of Palestine. And he basically said, you know, your blood is not being spilled in vain. And it just kind of seemed like the sentiment of the letter was something along the lines of this is a very dark time and it will get better and you are dying as martyrs. But it didn't really touch on anything about we're going to be taking action to defend you this week and join in against, Israel. One last thing, though, about Craig's statement. Craig made the statement about America having the free speech and the religious, freedoms and all that stuff, and the political we can choose. Okay, we don't choose our politicians. The deep state elects them. Thomas Massey might be the only guy that sometimes gets to speak out against what they want. As for religious freedom, okay, you talk about not funding Russia and Iran because they don't have religious freedom. I was just in Russia. I mean, it's a very religiously diverse country. You even have Dagestan that's basically all Muslims. Who are we funding right now? We're funding Israel, which silences and brutalizes even Orthodox Jews who speak out in defense of Palestine. We're also funding Ukraine, who right now is criminalizing the Russian Orthodox Church inside of Ukraine. As for free speech, and someone else mentioned free speech, I mean, you talk about free speech in America right now. What's the biggest issue? It's Palestine, Israel. Look at all the YouTube channels that have been censored over the past week or 2 weeks surrounding, speaking out for the Palestinians. Look at the people who've even been fired from the mainstream press for slightly talking about the conflict in a neutral manner. Look at what's happening. You say, oh, but they don't imprison people here. Well, Julian Assange is in Belmarsh right now, but also, why would they go through all of the expenses and the difficulties and the political unpopularity of prisoning people if they could just silence everyone by banning them on social media? And that's why I love X, because so far they haven't done that to most people. So yeah, I think that you're a bit delusional.
Okay, so I'll simply reply to it.
Jackson, I've got a quick question for you then.
Okay.
It's quite interesting to hear your analysis of stuff, because I wish you'd do it more often. And it's quite interesting to actually hear what you think about stuff. I don't disagree with you about Russia. I mean, being half Russian, I know the religious diversity that Russia actually has. A lot of people seem to think it's quite monolithic, but it isn't. It's very actually quite accepting of Islamic and or Muslim and other communities, albeit they do clamp down quite hard. But my question to you is, what do you think about the end game in this, right? The Israelis are claiming to have reached the other side of Gaza. They intend to, I saw one report suggesting that they might even flood the tunnels of Hamas to try and deal with the situation. What do you think about that's the specific question. Post-war governance, right? So in any scenario, the Americans and Israelis are thinking about a multinational force, right? So this could be the Arab League, it could be maybe the Israelis themselves, it could be a mixture of countries, right? What do you think about that? Do you think that we could get a pro-democratic Fatah kind of situation in here, a PA, Palestinian Authority, or do you think it's just a case of Hamas are not going to give up and the Israelis are going to leave having lost because they can't defeat Hamas? What do you think?
Well, I think the Palestinian Authority has kind of shown themselves to be the clowns that they are when it comes to dealing with any serious threats to the Palestinian people in a meaningful way. But that's just my opinion as an American. I'm not a Palestinian, so who the hell cares what I think about who governs their country? They'll figure that stuff out. What we need to have, and I can say this as an American, is I think we need to implement the United Nations resolution on the establishment of a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders. I think that's what we need, and I can say that. But as for who governs it, they'll deal with that on their own. Israeli governance, I don't think Netanyahu's going to be in power for much longer. Maybe he doesn't even survive this conflict, but I don't think he'll be in power much long after this ends.
So just the UN thing, though, do you not think that, I mean, the Russians were the first to actually propose the 1967 borders, but do you not find that scenario is a little bit absurd? Because, how can you have a functioning Palestinian state with a tiny bit of strip on one side and then the rest of the West Bank on the other, right? Surely that's not going to work, because, how do the Palestinians go through Israel to West Bank for work, right? For me, it doesn't make sense. I feel like a land swap would make more sense. Or do you? Or you disagree with
that was part of the plan.
Yeah, but it's not for us. Is that possible? You do? Okay.
Can I interject,
the real
please?
thing.
Can I interject just briefly? Can I just interject? I think what we've got to be wary of, particularly if you're Jewish or Muslim, whether or not you're Sunni or Shia, is when you're listening to parties that there are a lot of parties who espouse white nationalist views, and there are a lot of people willing to exploit, a lot of sentiment here and turn, Jews against Muslims and whatnot, and who talk about things like manifest destiny, and it's quite dangerous actually. White supremacists are not friends of the Palestinian people. This is not how Palestinians win freedom, and so people have to be really careful when you're listening to the ideas that have been kind of talked about here. These people are not allies of Palestinians.
And if I could, Jackson, forgive me. I'm sorry. I just want to say something because I do have to go. I have to go to dinner, not at McDonald's, I might add you, but dinner nonetheless. I just want to remind people that in the United States, we don't assassinate journalists half a mile from the White House, right? In the United States, we do not lock up our political prisoners that are not unduly convicted through due process, like happens in Russia. We do not publicly execute people like they do in Iran by hanging them from a rope in a town square. We
You're
do not lock up
exactly
entire.
describing what's happening in Israel, actually.
Hold on,
So,
Craig.
so,
Finish off Craig and Jackson respond, please.
So the point that it does matter to Israel, because this is a group of nations that have sided and taken the side of people that have no problem killing and murdering innocent people and saying Israel shouldn't do anything about it. Okay. The question that has to be answered here is proportionality. And I'll conclude with this. If what you believe to be seeing in Gaza is wrong, that it's humanely wrong and Israel shouldn't do it, I have yet to hear anybody say, fine, here's the proportional response that Israel should have. The answer is always Israel basically shouldn't respond with anything. And I will go one further. If this was to happen to Iran, I think what happened in Grozny is a great example, right? A couple of Muslim fanatics, apparently it was the FSB, who really knows, but apparently Russia says it was a bunch of Muslim fanatics that blew up a bunch of apartment buildings. What did Russia do then? It went into Chechnya and it leveled the place. It committed genocide on a wide scale. I don't see anybody here saying that that was wrong, right? But Israel essentially is doing what Russia did after a couple bombings in some apartment buildings in Grozny. And keep in mind that that was a Muslim country as well. So what Israel is doing is what Russia did, according to some. And so if you have no problem with what Russia did, you shouldn't have a problem with what Israel is doing. There is no comment in regards to proportionality, and nobody is ever going to come out and say Israel only is limited to 50 bombs. It can drop 50 bombs to what Hamas did. 50 bombs, and that's
I get what you're saying. I think well, first of all, it's a horrendous comparison. I mean, Russia, at a very politically catastrophic and economically dangerous time for their country, was battling a CIA proxy warfare in the region. So I think it was handled in a beautiful way, and I think the saboteurs were dealt with as they should have been. But people like you will say, "Oh, Russia's genociding Ukraine." Russia, it's like everything China's committing a genocide in Xinjiang. Okay, yeah, no one buys that. So I think that as for, you said, well, Iran hangs people and blah blah blah. Okay, so I don't live in Iran. Why should I care about how they deal their okay? So why do I care about that? So if you care so much about that, why don't you care about the fact that the Canadian government is providing legal euthanasia for people who are depressed? I mean, that seems like a lot more horrific of a
That's true.
system.
You've got a point.
Lot more horrific of a system in Canada right now than what Iran is doing. I mean, at least Iran has like the premise of, well, if someone commits a crime, they're gonna face a penalty. What Canada's doing is very depressing and very anti-human and sick and twisted.
Wait. You're saying assisted suicide euthanasia is wrong?
No, I think what he's saying, and he has a valid point, right?
is wrong.
Those people, this is a totally different topic.
Guys, hold on, guys.
It was just an analogy because he made an analogy, but those are anti-human Satanists who do that stuff. So, anyways, but I'll get back to the point that you were making about Israel. So the proportional response Israel should have. Well, I come back to my point. As an American, I say $0 to Israel. And what does that mean? That means that Israel, for the I guess near term, will have some supplies to continue attacking Palestinians. But I think all states, all governments should just deal with their issues on their own. They shouldn't have to rely on the U.S. or anyone else for subsistence. And you brought up the point earlier. Well, no one's making the point that Iran is providing help to the Palestinians or to Syrians or something.
Or Hezbollah.
Wait. Let me just finish. Okay, Iran would not have to provide help to any of those groups if the U.S. wasn't funding Al Qaeda and ISIS and Al Nusra and Jaish al Islam and Hayat Tahrir al Sham and the Israelis in the entire region. If the US wasn't doing that, then they wouldn't have to fund all those groups. It's as simple as that. People ask, why do the Arabs hate us? Because we completely and utterly, with every single spending bill we pass, we terrorize these people by funding these terroristic proxies that I just mentioned. So if it wasn't for the US doing that, then these countries wouldn't have to rely on, the largest oil producing nation in the region that they're allied with deeply for any assistance. So it's as simple as that.
So then allow me to conclude, and I'm going to leave after this. So don't take that as disrespect. I'll go to listeners, so I'll hear your response, but don't take this as being disrespectful. The question then remains: how come all these Middle East countries invite our bases and invite our military to be there? Like, I don't know, like the headquarters for the Fifth Fleet. Why are these countries inviting us to be there if we're imposing ourselves?
Which countries are you referring to?
I can answer that. Saudi, they wanted a US defense alliance for 50 years. It was my friend's father, Adnan Khashoggi, who set it up. They do see American interests as being more vital to them.
No. That
than
sounds like
Chinese
Saudi Arabia.
or Russian.
No. That sounds like Saudi Arabia used a national decision. They have agency as an independent country, and they chose an alliance with the United States. Sorry if you don't like that, but Saudi Arabia chose it. The Qataris, Kuwait, every country in the Middle East that we have bases, we are invited to be there.
Not Syria and Iraq.
So wait, let me just. So this is how your mindset works. So sovereign government A exists. Sovereign government A says we don't like the U.S. really, and we kind of just want to stick to ourselves. The U.S. says, oh, we don't like sovereign government A for saying that they don't like us. So we're going to go and wage a proxy warfare, regime change operation, coup their government, fund NGOs to
when
millions of dollars.
When did we do that to Saudi Arabia? When did we do that?
Well, Saudi Arabia is a different example. I mean, the history of the formation of the country is a little bit different. But, it's worth noting that even Saudi Arabia is turning away from the U.S. and forming alliances with Russia, basically, and China.
On Wall Street? Is that why they have $5 trillion on Wall Street right now? Because they're
it's why they just joined BRICS, and they're going to be helping in the establishment of this new multipolar world because they don't like what the U.S. is doing.
BRICS is overblown, guys. Like Saudi Arabia and Iran.
Guys, appreciate guys.
But as for your comments about all these nations, I mean, you listed Saudi Arabia as one example. Okay, well, what about all the nations that you listed? Kuwait. Oh, we've never done anything in Kuwait. The U.S. has never done anything in Kuwait. Never. We didn't lie about Kuwait. We didn't do anything there. What about Iraq? What about Iraq? What about Iraq? Okay, so the U.S. has bases in Iraq right now. We didn't do anything to Iraq. What about Syria? The U.S. has bases in Syria. We definitely didn't fund Al-Qaeda in Syria. So your argument is complete and utter BS.
It's not, because the Americans are welcomed by half a dozen states around the world.
Can I say something from Iraq?
Because they're welcome to be part of NATO bases. The Italians may not like it, but the government gives authorization for the NATO bases to be existing.
Yeah, but Piotr, what Jackson is talking about is the support of terrorism for the countries. So the bases he's talking about mainly are Syria.
Slightly different. I mean, I have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, but Iraq, for example, they passed a bill in their parliament that they do not want the U.S. Military there, and they're still there. Syria never invited them, and they're still there.
No, I don't disagree with the Americans overexert themselves in places that they're no longer welcome.
It's not an exertion, it's an occupation. The Syrians never invited them.
I wouldn't use that word occupation.
I mean,
okay, so let me just tell you what happened in Syria, because you guys are saying, oh, the US, they're just invited. The U.S. was never invited. You know who the Syrians invited? Russia. They invited Russia because the U.S. was funding Al-Qaeda and all these other Al-Qaeda affiliated groups in their country against the Assad government. And now the U.S. is occupying 1/3 of Syria, which has all the
I'm not talking about Syria, but I was talking about NATO. I was talking about countries in Southeast Asia. I was talking about countries elsewhere. But never mind. I mean, this
is Middle East. We're talking about the Middle East and about the fact that the U.S. is causing all these problems in the Middle East.
Anyway.
We're talking about the Middle East because someone posed the question: what would happen if Israel and other proxy states aren't funded anymore? And they said, well, Iran would continue funding these militant groups. Well, no, I mean, there would be no reason to if Israel didn't exist.
Jackson, what would be the solution?
Do you still support the genocide of Uyghurs?
I just have a question to Jackson.
Do you still support the genocide of Uyghurs?
Go ahead, Habiba. Ask your question to who?
I just wanted to know if he still supports the genocide
Who?
of Uyghurs, Jackson, if he still believes in white might and a white future for America. Does he still support those ideas?
Well, I never said I don't even know what you're talking about. White might and white future. I never said that shit. But as for and I never said anything like it, so I don't know why you're coming up here and trying to smear me. It's very odd. I mean, we're having a good conversation.
Jackson, come on, buddy. That's all you do. You smear people constantly.
Wait. Piotr, you and I might have disagreements, and we might, take jabs once in a while, but at least we can have a good back and forth. I don't know what this person's even referring to. So,
well, okay, I welcome you for a good back and forth more often.
Hold on. Go, Jackson.
So Habiba said something about Uyghur genocide. I'm aware of no Uyghur genocide. I've never heard of this. It doesn't exist. Like, what are you talking about?
So you don't think that the Chinese are trying to eradicate the Uyghur Muslims, right?
No, I've never seen any proof of that, and it doesn't exist.
That's helpful for the audience, I think. Thank you.
Jackson, my question to you is, what do you think is the solution between Israel and Palestine at the moment, especially after all what happened now?
I think a lot of states have taken on the notion of the UN resolution with the 1967 borders. I mean, there's nothing perfect, but I think that's probably going to be the solution here that makes the most sense.
I agree with him, Mario. I absolutely I can't believe it.
I don't know. That's all you've said today is how much you agree with Jackson.
I do want to go to. Good point. No, he does make a good point, though, right? I mean, clearly I'm not in his camp, but
okay.
Yeah,
now I have a question.
Hold on.
That you will not agree on with.
But I'll couple that with also the U.S. needs to stop funding Israel, and as soon as that
Can I ask you a
happens,
question, Jackson?
Israel's done.
Okay, here's a question.
Can I ask him?
Hold on, guys. I want to see. No, go, Zev. Let me see what Zev wants to ask him. Let's see.
I have a genuine question. So you are of the belief that if the United States stops supporting Israel, Israel will fall in 3 weeks. Okay, we can differ on that. So if that were to happen, would you also concede that America can no longer tie Israel's hands in how they deal with neighboring countries and internal problems and the problems with the Palestinians?
Sorry, ask the latter part of the question one more time.
Yeah, sure. So if the aid or whatever support for Israel was cut off, would you also agree that the U.S. would no longer be able to suggest how Israel deal with the problems, terrorism and so forth from the Palestinians? Is that a compromise?
I mean, I as a member of the United Nations Security Council, of course, the U.S. would have the ability to, give their thoughts and opinions and pass votes on whether or not what Israel's doing is sanctioned under international law. But of course, even without the aid, it doesn't mean you cut off all your ties with Israel and you cut off relations. So they could, of course, talk and debate these issues.
Okay, no, I can't believe I agree with you on a couple things. Wow. Thank you very much.
Can I make a couple of corrections, Mario?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
As for Iraq, guys, since 2011, there is an agreement between the Iraqi government and the U.S. government. As for the vote in parliament, yes, there was a vote post the assassination of Soleimani and Abu Mahdi Muhandis, but the Iraqi government never implemented it. Every Iraqi leader, including the closest to Iran, know that at this very moment, the Iraqi government is not capable, because of all sort of problems, to protect the citizens, the security, its borders, or whatever. So the U.S. is here on a formal agreement. As for Syria, we remember the attack on Kobani, the Kurdish city at the border that was about to fall. That was the moment the U.S. intervened and ISIS was pushed back. We had terrorist attacks all over the world, Europe, U.S. So it's more complicated than just being we are there. That's one. Two, I am a Kurd. In 1991, there was a massive exodus. 2 million people left the border, left Kurdistan, went to Iraqi-Turkish borders. The Security Council established a no-fly zone, and you could say hundreds of thousands of people are alive because the US is here, and they're not getting anything for protecting the Kurds. So you have different views in the Middle East. It's not everybody. They deal with the one shortcoming, and this has been acknowledged by former US presidents, policymakers, has been the Palestinian issue. And we are here because that was not solved probably in time. Otherwise, it's not like everybody thinks the US is a force for, bad things. There are a lot of positive views. It's more complicated, I would say. It's not black and white.
It is more complicated. I agree. I mean, I think it's absolutely criminal how the Kurds have been basically they've been ending up on the short end of the stick every time in history. But I think it's also criminal how the Kurds have in the most vicious way possible betrayed their own country, betrayed Syria, and betrayed the Syrian people. And I think, the fact that they're working and helping the U.S. funnel all this oil and agricultural resources from the Northeast across the border is sick and twisted. And it will never be forgotten. It's a very shameful stain on the history of these Kurdish U.S. proxy groups.
So I've got a quick question for you, Jackson. Then a couple of days ago, when you were on the panel, you ended your contribution by saying, President Assad was based. Given your, resentment or reservations for the American government, I'm just curious though. Do you not think it's a little bit of a extremity to say that? I mean, who do you look to as a example of genuinely good leadership? Putin? Because sure, I can agree. I have a lot of issues with I hate to use this word, but wokeism. I think Trudeau's gone too far much the other way. I never forget what he said in 2018. It's not mankind, it's people kind. It's bizarre. But do you not think that sometimes if you have too much of an authoritative governance, that is not good for civil liberties, right? If I want to disagree with someone, even the government, but I'm fearful of actually being in trouble, and again, I'm saying this from experience of family in Russia and Siberia and Novosibirsk, that's not good either. Is there a country you look to that is the most, the best example of what a country could be like? Government. I'm very curious.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think that I think as Americans we have to chart our own course and draw our own line, and I don't think we should replicate anyone. I think we can learn from other countries, but I don't think we should replicate anyone. I also am concerned about the authoritative nature of certain governments, like the United Kingdom and the United States, for example, who censor anybody with brutal repression if they speak out against our official ventures all across the world. Via the U.S. military. And I think as for leaders that I respect today alive, I mean, of course, Assad is a great leader. I mean, he overcame all the odds to still remain. No. And I think that's extremely based. And I also like Xi Jinping. I like Putin. Leaders not alive anymore, of course. I think all people should look towards Mao and Stalin. I think they were great leaders.
Right, I think you just proved why I don't think
Hold on,
that...
Habiba, go ahead, reply, Habiba.
Right, so if you believe that Stalin was a good person and is a moral force for good, you are not an ally of Palestinians, right? You are not. If you believe that Putin is a good person and a force for good, you are not an ally of Palestinians. There's no two ways
who
about
is this? Who is this CIA agent that keeps trying to interject and say, if you do this, then you're not an ally of the I'm the most. Hey, listen, Habiba, I'm the most viral account on all of X. I'm way more viral than even Elon Musk, and I'm viral right now because I'm viral. Hey, listen.
A lot of people.
Silence.
Guys, whoever pressed the mute all button, please don't. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jax. I'll let you respond.
I'm the most viral account right now on the entire platform in the entire world because I stand with Palestine and I'm exposing the truth. So I don't care. Listen, Habiba, I don't know if you've ever worked with a union or been a part of a union or organized a union, but let me just quickly draw this analogy for you. If you got all the workers in a factory come together and say, hey, we don't think we're getting paid enough. And all those workers come together and they say, we want to start a union because we want to get better pay. The leader of that union doesn't get up in front of all the workers and say, all right, everyone who's a Trump supporter, raise your hand. Okay, all of you, you're not going to be a part of our union. Okay, everyone who doesn't believe in LGBTQ, transgenderism rights, raise your hand. Okay, you're not going to be a part of the union. And then organize with the people who are left. You organize with people who you can come to agreements with on the issues that you're talking about and you care about and you're fighting for. And personally, I don't care what your views are about this fake so-called genocide of Uyghur Muslims. If you agree with me on Palestine, I'll work with you on Palestine. It's as simple as that.
So that's what I'm trying to say. I think you're exploiting the Palestinian cause for clicks, and people are falling for it. And people have to be wary of who they're aligning themselves with, because you've got to remember these parties, Russia and China, and I'm not talking about, you know, the misdeeds that have happened, because we've seen them, right? But these parties have been eradicating, whether or not you're Sunni or Shia, whichever, you know, whether or not you're Ukrainian. I've worked in all these zones for all these years, right? And so the Russians were behind things like the slaughter in Sarajevo. I was living there at the time, you know, every single cause and major crises around the world. They have been a force for destabilizing countries around the world, and we are victim to it. And Russians have literally been paying white supremacists all over the world, boosting them, and these are the people who come
Wait,
out
why do you
and
keep
they
calling me a
oppress
white
Muslims. And
supremacist? That's so crazy.
what did you? I put a tweet on my profile, which literally I think you deleted,
and
right?
I corrected you and pointed out that was a fake tweet that was edited with my profile on it from a Ukraine supporter. So why are you continuing to say that this tweet was
I don't
real?
think you did. I mean, I've followed his account for quite a while.
No, I think go ahead, Habiba. I'll let her reply. Habiba, do you want to reply what Jackson just said?
Yeah, I think he's got a history of it, and
wait. But you said that the tweet was real. So are you going to apologize to me right now?
I'm not accepting that you don't espouse those views, because it's in line with what you said.
You put up a fake tweet about me, so are you going to apologize right now in front of these 20,000 people?
Absolutely not, because I think it's in line with exactly what you've been saying for a long time. You've just, in this conversation,
but I never
talked about
said
manifest destiny. What is manifest destiny to you, right? This is, you know, when people talk about, you know, the white supremacist movements in the US, he's literally a poster child for that kind of thing, right? So be careful, people, when you're listening to these kind of
views,
you're
just lying about me.
I'll give you an example. Yesterday, you said you brought Scott Ritter on your program. He's a convicted pedophile. Why would you do that?
Well, you know, I wouldn't probably have him babysit my kids, but I think he's a great voice when it comes to analyzing these complex geopolitical situations. I also think if you're a man like Scott Ritter, they're going to have any and every single attempt at trying to set you up for some sort of a crazy story and scenario. And I think, you know, he was a former UN weapons inspector who spoke out about one of the greatest lies of our century, the WMD lie in Iraq, and others, I should add. So I think, you know, I think you have to be weary of what the deep state is willing to do to try and silence dissidents and discredit them. But I think that at the end of the day, you just lied about me and you need to apologize.
So Jackson, people always reference Scott Ritter. I don't know.
Just before going to Scott Ritter, Habib, I think it's an important point. Just the post that you've put out on Jackson, and the claim you've made. Are you willing to remove the post if it's proven to be incorrect? Just
yeah, absolutely. But what is
wait? But I just proved it's incorrect.
Where have you disproved it?
Well, how do I disprove a fake tweet? The burden of proof is on you to show that it's real.
I'm not the one who tweeted it.
I didn't tweet it either.
Okay, so
you actually did tweet it because you posted it, so you tweeted it.
Right, so I'm going to ask you something.
No, you're a white supremacist.
No, do you believe that manifest destiny is for white Americans?
Well, I think that white supremacists like you is going to try and say that, you know, try to obfuscate these issues. But your white supremacy is very endangering to the Palestinian cause. And I think that all Palestinians listening right now should be very weary of this Habiba person who posted a white supremacist post on their Twitter account.
Right, guys. Like I said, he's just said he has no problem with a convicted pedophile. He's not an ally of Palestinians.
Wait. Like I just said, this Habiba person is a white supremacist who posted white supremacist views on their Twitter account.
She's got a name.
I have a name. I'm brown.
Can I ask Jackson a question?
But are you now you're being exclusionary? Brown people can't be white supremacists too?
Right. So I'm half South African. I was raised in an anti-apartheid family. And the reason I support Palestine, even though I support US interests, is because it's in my DNA. Right. And we do not ally with people who are racist, people who deny genocide.
Now she's talking about DNA. She's definitely a white supremacist. She's talking about DNA and genetic superiority.
I don't know how on earth you're asserting that I am one. What's your
well, you posted a white supremacist post on your Twitter account.
Habiba, are you Palestinian or Arab or?
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Are you Palestinian?
No, I'm not. I've just lived in the region for years. And yesterday I got accused of being Hamas, believe it or not.
Could I chime in?
Look,
Habiba, you cannot.
like choosing sides here, but I don't think you should be like speaking on behalf of an entire people.
I'm not at all. The reason I'm getting involved is because I've worked for Middle Eastern governments for years, and I'm working for
You
kind of the
worked as
causes.
a U.S. agent for these Middle Eastern governments, these proxy governments, and you're a white supremacist because you posted it on your Twitter account.
So a guy
I get
here
in and
is
change the
literally calling me a
subject,
white
Mario?
supremacist. It's mad.
I have a question.
Absolutely batshit
Mario,
mad.
can I've been waiting for hours if it's okay. Because it's getting a bit out of hand, I think. Can I just say that I've been to Syria during the war, and I say Syria, it was like a very small part of it, and those who are familiar will know the town city of Kilis. And the reason I went there was as part of the British Arab Psychiatric Association. We were training.
So what point you're making? Sorry, Ahmed, before the story.
It's about what's happened in Syria and what I saw very briefly, with Jackson kind of here. If that's okay.
Okay, it's a specific point that Jackson mentioned, just to make sure I'm in line, because it just seems like a sudden digression.
All right, no, because he was going on about I've changed the subject from him and Habib. I think unless you want to go on with that, but about Syria and Bashar Assad. So
okay, go ahead. Yeah, Bashar. Okay, I got it. Yeah, the statement about Bashar Assad being a great leader, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So Mario, I'm always on here talking about the medical casualties in Gaza, and and unfortunately, yesterday and the day before yesterday as well, since I've spoken, at least another 3 doctors and dentists have been killed, as well as operation room head of department. So as I say, so Israel is always targeting these people. But I saw for myself, as I said, it was a while ago. It was about 10 years ago. But I went to Kilis to train doctors on how to give psychological emergency help to children. And I saw children myself in Kilis Hospital, and I also crossed the border into Bab al-Salam refugee camp, which was horrible.
In Syria?
Basically.
In Syria?
Yes, in Syria. That's like on the way to Aleppo. That's how you get to Aleppo. There were taxis saying go to Aleppo.
Yeah, sorry, Ahmed, just a question. So can you tell us some of the things that the Assad has done in Syria? Because I've heard a lot of the atrocities. I'd love to get Jackson's thoughts on them.
So I saw limbless kids, and I remember taking but again, just bombed in Aleppo, because that was the nearest place for them to get help. Now, luckily for them, there's no closed borders at the time anyway, with Turkey, for example, like there is in Gaza now, where people can't get help, can't get medical supplies. So those who are being treated were taken to Kilis Hospital, which is, as I said, right on the border with Syria and Turkey. And I saw loads of kids without limbs, and I remember taking a kid out for a burger and having to feed him the burger. He was so happy, and he still had operations which he needed on his feet. And what happened, his dad was there. He said, well, we're in our home, and bang, missile, barrel bomb, missile, barrel bomb. Apparently
on the refugee camp or the hospital? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, finish off. Sorry.
No. This is like they were hit in Aleppo city, but then they were evacuated to the Turkey border to get treatment. But as I said, I also crossed into into Syria about 2 kilometers into Bab al-Salam, if I remember. I've got a YouTube video of that.
Okay, and you went according to Jackson. Just I'm trying to relate it to what Jackson said, man.
Yeah, I was trying to relate is that these people, I can tell you, were not ISIS. Just like in Gaza, they were. These are not terrorists who are being, basically bombed in their thousands. And the same thing in fact, people didn't even know what ISIS was at that time. This is 2013, and they were just being bombed and bombed and bombed just because they protested against Bashar Assad. And there were hospitals that were hit. There were doctors that were killed. Exactly what was happening in Gaza now. And I'm totally against any of it, any hospitals, any doctors being hit by Bashar Assad or by Netanyahu. Doesn't make any difference to me who's doing it. So to say that he's a great leader, I don't know how that's being a great leader, destroying your own. Please don't call me a US agent or something like that. I don't think I can even go to the US, Jackson, because of the stuff that I've been saying about the US. Look at my profile. And yes, I am in the UK. I've been saying I've been calling Sunak a terrorist, by the way, because I think he's a terrorist. All those people
Jackson,
are supporting.
You want to try back to
there
this?
you go. Yeah.
Jackson, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there were a lot of atrocities committed
in Syria when Assad was in government. Unfortunately, the Western press and many well-meaning voices try to paint these atrocities as having been committed by Assad himself or his forces or the Russians or whoever. But at the end of the day, these atrocities, like in Ghouta and Douma, for example, were committed by the U.S.-funded proxy groups on the ground, like the White Helmets staging these alleged atrocities. You had
I spoke to
Al-Nusra,
the
Hayat
victims,
Tahrir al-Sham,
Jackson. I
Jaish
saw them.
al-Islam.
Jackson, I saw the victims. I spoke to them.
I know, and there's plenty of people who are of Syrian descent, the diasporoids, who will tell you that Bashar al-Assad bombed the Douma or did the chemical attack in Douma and Ghouta and
This
whatnot,
is
even though
Aleppo.
there's
Talk
no
about
evidence
Aleppo.
of that. Yeah, well, Aleppo wasn't under Assad's control for a good portion of the war, so
Yeah, that's why he bombed it. Aleppo, Rafat.
But you have to understand that just because it's not under his control. Same with Douma. Douma wasn't under the control of him either when the chemical attack took place. That doesn't mean that by default he did it. And what the evidence showed us, he didn't do it. The independent investigators on the ground showed that it was actually not Assad who could have carried out that attack.
Jackson, do you know what you sound like? But Jackson,
okay,
you sound like exactly in Gaza, the Gaza hospital.
I don't even know
like
who I sound like
Hamas
because I've
bombed
been
themselves,
interrupted
kind of
so
thing.
many
It's the
times.
same thing now, isn't it?
I know.
It's like the hospital.
I don't even know what I sound like anymore. I've been interrupted so
Sorry,
much.
Jackson, but what I'm saying is,
I know.
the hospital in Gaza. The hospital in Gaza, it's
Yeah.
the same. They were saying the same thing. It couldn't have been Israel. It was themselves. A missile came and hit them back again.
Well, I think that's why you need to have, these independent investigations that will never happen for all these sorts of things. Because, of course, the West is going to say that Assad did everything. And of course, Israel is going to say Hamas did everything. But, 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, you look at the facts and it's actually a false flag. So I think that, Ahmed, you should be a little bit more careful about speaking so bluntly about.
Besides going and seeing it for myself.
Wait.
Did you go, Jack?
I know.
Okay, yeah.
I know.
Fair enough.
I did get invited to Syria, but I didn't go about 2 years ago. But I think that, you told this grandiose story and it was very sad. And I'm sure it definitely, it's a real story. I'm not contesting that. What I'm saying is it's different to say, oh, this person, maybe a person who's a victim or a person who lived in the country tells me this, therefore it is real. There's a difference between that and saying there was a full-fledged international, investigation, and these are the facts that we uncovered at the scene. So I think that it's difficult to not speak with these sorts of ultimatums, but you have to question everything. And with the incidents in Syria, there is a whole lot to question.
I have a quick question. Hold on. You provided the defense. Hold on. 2 seconds. Habiba, I want to go back to Habiba one thing. Habiba, you made a statement about the Jackson, and you were upset with a few things. If he's and about him not being trusted, but if he's fighting the cause, whether you agree with him or not, you agree with the strategy, the things he says, the extreme stances he may take at times, you are fighting a common cause. So my question to you is, why attack someone if you disagree on other matters if you're both fighting a common enemy?
Okay, so listen, we've
and
got
I mean this
people,
genuinely.
Yeah, I get it. We've got people in this group who are, on the more pro-Iranian, and I'm on the other side. But for the interests of the Palestinian people, because they're dying, and I'm deeply affected by that. I've got just countless Palestinian friends that I've grown up with. It's just part of who we are as Muslims. That this is who we are. Whether or not you're Sunni or Shia, it affects you. If you're Christian, or it just affects us. The difference is these people, I've posted a video up where he talks about how he thinks Netanyahu's a good guy. So like I said, there's more people than me have done research on the fact that there are people
There's a reason for
exploiting
that.
this.
You're leaving out the important context.
Sure, there's any context to ever supporting Netanyahu. I think you have to do your research. People know who you're supporting. That's all I'm saying. So there are people who are going to exploit the causes that we are interested in, and that's a difference between I have an ideological difference.
I'll let Jackson respond, just especially with the Netanyahu video. Strong allegation. Go ahead.
So, to the person that just spoke, do you know what Nasrallah said about Netanyahu?
It's Habiba.
Yeah, I'm not even going to address by name. Do you know what Nasrallah said about Netanyahu?
Which time? I mean, it's a long conflict. We're not new to this.
Well, when he spoke positively.
Sorry, I'm really not sure what you're referring to.
Well, you're not sure what I'm referring to, probably because you selectively cherry pick videos that are like 10 seconds long of multi-hour streams where I'm discussing these issues and these people in a very similar characterization to Hassan Nasrallah, who said that actually Netanyahu, when it comes to him being the leader of Israel, is a good leader for the country because he destroys Israel's credibility and helps the resistance by his stupidity. So I think it's just funny that you take a clip out of context that's like 10 seconds long and you post it claiming that I once ever supported Netanyahu when that's not the case.
I don't think you'll find any single one of us ever having said or praised or
I literally
supported
just
anything to do with him.
the leader of the Secretary General of Hezbollah literally said the same thing. You're not even Palestinian. The Secretary General of Hezbollah said the same exact thing.
Sorry, what I'm getting at is, again, people need to look at his history.
Wait.
They need to
But
look
you
at who
just
he
said
is.
that wait. You just said that you won't find a single one of us acting like you're a Palestinian, by the way.
No, I didn't say that. I said one of us, not one of us.
So who's one of us?
Anyone supporting the Palestinians will never have had anything good to say.
Does Hassan Nasrallah support the Palestinians?
I'm not a fan of Nasrallah and I'm not a fan of Hamas.
Does he support the Palestinians?
I'm not here to like the people who
wait. Is he like one of the biggest?
Can speak to that. No, I'm not going to get drawn on whether or not I'm not going to get drawn on whether or not. No, I'm sorry. None of us. There's not one of us who would ever endorse Netanyahu, and yet that is what you've done. You have done that.
But I actually didn't do that. I said exactly what Nasrallah said. I said that Netanyahu is a good leader for Israel because he's so stupid. He actually helps the resistance and he strengthens the resistance. That's exactly what Nasrallah said. Then you said you won't find a single one of us who says anything good about Netanyahu. Well, I guess Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, no longer supports Palestine. I mean, your logic is so insane. You're clearly a Fed. And it's laughable that it's laughable.
No, I'm sorry. I'm really transparent about who I am and who I've worked for. And
you're very transparent.
You're
very transparent. You're very
and I stand by them.
You push for regime change in Libya. You're very transparent. So I just think it's so crazy. So apparently now, so I just want to get you on the record. Does Nasrallah stand with Palestine?
The Nasrallah position, yes, is to support the Palestinians. I do not support the Iranians whatsoever. I just don't. There's no two ways, right? So there is commonality, like I said, in terms of people on both sides of the divide. Whether or not you are Sunni or Shia, you are supporting the Palestinians. That is the end of the story. That is the end of the story. There's not one of us. There's not one of us who does not support the Palestinians. There's not one of us.
You tried to smear me. I asked you a simple question about Nasrallah because he said the same exact thing I said. You said, yes, of course he supports the Palestinians. So what's your beef with me?
Like I said, anyone who supports or doesn't even believe that China is committing the eradication of Uyghur Muslims, you've got to ask yourselves, people, who is this man? Who is he exploiting? He's not on the side of Muslims.
You're pushing for regime change in Libya. Who are you?
You have no idea what all the work that I've done. I've worked on every Muslim conflict zone as a matter of
so hard
principle,
to push for these LGBTQ transgenderism values.
Wait, Jackson,
I do support LGBTQ rights.
When you
yes,
ran
I do.
for student council.
Go ahead, guys.
Can you support LGBT? I swear, in
Mario, I have a
2018,
couple of
there's an image
questions.
of you there.
Yeah, in a second.
If you could answer that, Jackson, I'd be interested. No, I'm just curious. Jackson, didn't you, when you were running for California state leader or something, there's an image of you and your support for LGBT and more socialist things. So could you clarify your past? Because you seem to have done a complete U-turn on some of the things you were advocating for in 2018, if I remember correctly.
I don't. There's no photo. I don't know what you're talking about. A photo. I mean, I would know that if that was the case. But
on your LinkedIn, there's a. Hang on, I can find the thread if you like. There's a set of images of you when you were running to be someone of influence in California. I can't remember if it's councillor or
you asked the question. You asked the question, so let me respond.
Yeah, but I'm adding depth so that it to help remind you.
Okay, so let me answer the question. So I think it's very well known that I previously, when I was 17 years old, when I started my campaign for city council, by the way, that I was more liberal, of course, but I was focused on local issues. I mean, you guys wouldn't even, no one here would know the issues I'm talking about that we debated on a daily basis because it's a local issue in Southern California. So LGBTQ issues didn't even matter in that city. But what I will say is that I don't think any 18 or 17-year-old looking back should probably be speaking with such definitive presumed clarity on issues of this much importance. And I'll also say I wasn't a Christian at the time. And as a Christian who's evolved in my views and woken up to a lot of the lies that the anti-human globalists push, I definitely would say that if Iran or Libya or Gaza, for example, wants to imprison or do away with the transgenderism targeted at children and all that nonsense, yeah, it's well within their right, and I support it. So I think it's good on them, and for people like this individual who was just speaking to say, oh, I support transgenderism and I've been working in all these countries. You're literally pushing for the sovereign governments to be forced out of power so you can cut off minors' dicks in Libya. I mean, it's insane what you're doing. And you're doing it not even as a Palestinian. It's insane. It's sick and twisted. And then you come up here and smear me.
Just to stay on the topic, though. So in 2018, you said that you want to clarify misinformation about your positions. You support legalizing prostitution and certain drugs in the country. And I know your point about the age, but this is only 4 or 5 years ago. So that only makes you, what, 22, 23? So do you not think that you're still a little bit young to be talking about long-term peace and stability in the Middle East? I'm not saying you can't have an opinion at that age. I'm not being ageist. But do you not think it's still then, to continue with your own argument, it's still a little bit young to have such concrete opinions? Shouldn't you be a little bit more flexible? Because it sounds like you're pretty thorough in your opinions now, and you've got a lot of people who disagree with you. Whether or not I agree with them is a different point. But just for devil's advocacy, do you not think you should be a little bit more flexible still if you're so young?
Okay, I get what you're trying to say here. You're trying to smear me because of my age.
No, not
so
at all. I'm
just
rejecting
no,
it.
no.
No, I don't think it's age.
No, listen.
You were talking about
you
Habib,
smear
so I'm
me.
asking
You
you.
smear.
Hold on,
So,
okay, let him
wait.
respond.
Let me just respond. So this person smeared me by claiming I made a post I didn't, and then refused to apologize, and actually admitted to posting a white supremacist post on their Twitter account. You, Piotr, are smearing me because of my age. People forget that America as a country was literally founded by 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. Like the founding fathers, they weren't fathers when they founded the country. Now, I think everyone develops in a different way and learns things at a different age. I happen to fall into the opinions I do, through learning and arriving this. I'm 24, by the way, at my age. So I think that, Piotr, for you to, come at me, you literally work for the World Bank.
No.
Wait. Okay, you can respond in a second.
Hold on, just have 2 seconds.
Wait. You can respond. You can respond in a second. But so let me just finish. The fact of the matter is, I'm 24, but I'm not. I'm not learning these things on my own. I'm learning from church elders and traditional leaders and the wisdom that they impart unto me. So for you to call into question my age, I mean, you're calling into question the wisdom of the world's leading experts on these issues. I'm just bringing these issues to the forefront. If before I wasn't listening to people with experience like Putin and Xi and leaders of the Orthodox Church. They humbled me. I've matured now, and I think that's what you're leaving out of the equation here.
So I appreciate your
do you support the Russian?
I appreciate your stance.
Yes.
I'm not going to get drawn into back and forth personal attacks.
Can I ask my questions?
2 seconds.
Yeah, 1 second, Hoshi. I just want to finish my back and forth with Jackson, and I'll pass right to you.
I'll go Habiba.
So basically, Jackson, the only reason I'm drawing this out is because in the past, when I've been more animated with you, you have attacked me for being a World Bank globalist shill and all this sort of rhetoric, right? So I just want to make a couple of points. I might work for a certain organization. I might be affiliated with certain schools of thought or whatever it is, right? It doesn't mean I hold everything about them. I worked in the World Bank because it's a good place for my line of industry, which is international development/relations. I don't agree with everything the World Bank does. I'm very much not a globalist. I don't like globalism. I'm not a fan of the World Economic Forum, and I don't think that forcing people to take vaccines, for example, because they might lose their job is right. Do I personally think that the vaccinations are a good form of global medicine? Yes, I do, but I don't believe in the social element. So the reason I'm just raising this is because you've done it to me in the past. But I personally think we should be better than making these personal quibs at one another. And whether or not Habib faked this tweet, which if it is fake, I don't think that's good either. But equally, I don't think you going after her personally is equally very classy. So that's all I'm trying to emphasize. I appreciate your perspective on certain things when it comes to Russia and other things, but that's all. Anyway,
let me get Syrian. I'll go to Syrian go. Syrian go waiting at Hashar afterwards. Syrian go.
Hi, I heard that Syria was mentioned in the chemical attacks, and I thought I would come in.
Are you a fan of Assad?
I am a supporter of the Syrian state against its enemies.
No, I mean, are you supportive of what Bashar Assad has done? Just so I know what your stance is.
Oh yeah. I support the Syrian military. I support Syria, and I support it against the U.S. and their cronies and the Al Qaeda terrorists and the ISIS
Israel.
And Israel, of course.
So on that point, so Samira Syrian Jackson, Hashar, what is your concern with Bashar al-Assad? I know you tried to jump in earlier, so we could hear the
No, I had just one question and a couple of follow-ups for Jackson.
Go ahead, sure.
One, he mentioned a couple of times the founding fathers, somehow compared himself to them. Why was the American Revolution undertaken?
Why? Well, there's many reasons, many reasons, but I think one of the biggest reasons. I think one of the biggest reasons was the Brits weren't allowing the Americans to develop further west.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question as well?
I'm not finished. If any people, any nation does not have, citizenship, does not have the right to speak their own language, any sort of recognition for their basic human rights, do they have the right to revolt?
If they don't have if they're not a citizen of a nation, do they have the right to revolt?
If they're living within a country or part of a country like the US was back then part of Britain.
I think I think that if you are taking first of all, anyone has the right to revolt, but the question is there foreign interference significantly at play guiding the revolt in question? And when it comes to the United States, it was in the interest of the people living in the colonies at the time to revolt against the crown. And I think it was done without implicit pressure from a foreign actor.
So the Declaration of Independence, when it says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that when any government violates this, you have the right to change it or alter it, that's false?
Why would that be false?
Well, you are saying the first question I asked, what was the U.S. Revolution for? Why did the founding fathers, for example, Benjamin Franklin was at the time in London actually trying to be part of the government there. Why did they revolt? And that the Declaration of Independence is the response, right?
It's a full-fledged response to many issues.
Okay.
What's the point you're trying to make here?
Because the point I'm trying to make previously, you talk about things you don't know anything about. Previously, you mentioned the Syrian Kurds. Do you know the Syrian Kurds? For 100 years, the U.S. was not there. They didn't have the right for citizenship.
Did you know?
I knew it was going to go there.
That Kurdish groups came to Syria from Turkey as refugees, and Syria accepted them. And in fact, even the leader of the PKK, Öcalan, admitted that
it's not Öcalan, it's Öcalan. Get the names right.
Hang on.
So guys, I'll go. As we're getting to Syrian politics.
It's the same.
Syria.
Sorry. It's the Mario. Just one quick
I
answer.
know this is
It's
close
not
to heart.
okay
Please go ahead.
Kurdistan in Syria is like Israel. They're trying to come into Syria and take the land for themselves. They're controlling all the oil, they're controlling all the water and all the wheat. It's a second Israel in the Middle East.
Wow.
I wanted to ask Habiba
Hold on. I don't want to go back to Habiba and Jackson again. I changed my mind, Zev. Hashar, I'll let you respond because I know this one comes close to heart, and then I've got a major announcement that I'll mention, and we can wrap up the space. Hashar,
like the Israeli Jews. Let me just add something so that he can respond properly.
Let me tell you. Before you respond, let me just mention the breaking news. It's pretty important, very, very, very important and positive. So there's reports now by Palestinian media. I'll read out exactly what they said. Possible truth. So just to give you context. We said the leaks that we had 2 days ago is that Hezbollah and other proxies will enter the war, mainly Hezbollah, tomorrow by noon if there's no either ceasefire. In my opinion, it doesn't say that, but in my opinion, either a plan for a ceasefire or some type of truce. People like Zev said that's impossible. Others said it's.
I didn't say it was impossible. I didn't say it was impossible.
Unlikely.
A ceasefire that's going to lead to.
How about truce?
A pause is possible.
All right, so let me tell you what the media. Let me tell you what the media. Let me tell you. Yeah, I know it is. I agree with you, but I don't want to get into semantics battle. We had it before. Possible truce discussions include bringing 50,000 liters of fuel per day into Gaza. So there's truce negotiations right now between Hamas and Israel. Obviously not direct. I don't think so. It's through a mediator, probably Qatar or some other mediator, Egypt, someone. But there are truce negotiations ongoing right now. I think it's the first time we get such a report, and it seems to be heading in the right direction. So they're kind of in line with everything else we said, with all the escalations, the pressure we're seeing from Iran. So fingers crossed this goes ahead. Hoshar, I want you to respond to Syrian
so
girls.
It's not the case. First of all,
before you respond, I want to finish my statement so they can respond properly to exactly what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
Because what I'm saying is, in 1996, Öcalan, the leader of the Kurds, said this statement: most of the Kurds of Syria were refugees and migrants from Turkey, and that they would benefit from returning there. Now, the idea is, who are the Kurdish people? They were a nomadic people from Iran. They moved into Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. They were minimally in Syria in pockets along the Turkish border. They are not a majority in the east of the Euphrates River. They are a minor plurality, which means that there's many minority groups there, and they outnumber the Kurds. Yet they're controlling the oil and they're controlling the wheat for the entirety of the Syrian people. Now, the Syrian president have given stateless Kurds the right to citizenship, even though that is never before given to any refugee in Syria, not even the Palestinian refugees, and yet these people are still want a piece of our land. They want to take the water and the wheat that belongs to all of Syrians and just give it to one ethnic group. And what does that remind you of? It reminds you of exactly how Israel was created. So I just want to.
Syrian girl, I think.
Sorry,
let me.
All right, so Hoshar, go ahead. Hoshar, let Hoshar respond.
Well, that's no surprise because they call us the second Israel for the Kurds, though, so there is no surprise there. First of all, the Kurds have, if you go back to the time of the Prophet, the Kurds have been there. Right now, as you speak, about 100 people in Gaza. Look, listen.
Syrian girl, I didn't interrupt you.
Right now, as we speak, 100 people who are Kurds originally, with the family name Kurd or Kurdi, have been killed in Gaza. So Salah ad-Din was a Kurd, and you can't deny that. Most of the prominent scholars, for example, yesterday, the head of the Islamic Union, Ali Qaradaghi, who asked the Arab countries to interfere on behalf of, Palestine, is a Kurd. Most of the famous poets, writers, all of them are Kurds. So don't try to change history. But it's not the case just for Syria. It's the case for Turkey. It's the case for Iran as well. This is the problem. This is the double standard. Okay, I am a Kurd. There is something basic I said a couple of nights ago. You have to defend every people's right for self-determination, whether it's self-rule, whether it's independence. You can't just support one of them. And as for Öcalan, it's Öcalan, not Öcalan. Öcalan was supported by Hafez Assad, later Bashar Assad. And the reason the Kurds are in the first place ruling part of Syria was because when the regime was under attack, Damascus specifically, there was an agreement between PKK and Bashar Assad to withdraw his forces voluntarily so that he could protect Damascus. And this is one of the things that Turkey accuses this Kurdish force in Syria of being part of PKK. So they have discussions. They have if you support Assad, you have to know these facts. Okay, it was not that the Kurds took up arms. The Kurds were never part of the Syrian revolution because even those who were revolting were not prepared to recognize Kurdish rights. Thank you very much.
No, I appreciate it, and seriously, I do want to wrap it. I appreciate everyone joining. Look, today's been a pretty intense day. I thought I'll do a quick 2-3 hour space. Go to sleep because tomorrow we've got Hezbollah's speech, and then we saw all the escalations in the region, and then at least we're ending on a positive note with truce discussions that could change everything. So I think the only thing that could prevent Hezbollah from joining in the near future, or other proxies from joining, either a truce in the short term, or at least a truce. In discussions of a truce that could reach, that could at least conclude positively, at least heading towards a truce. If Israel's open to a truce, then we could see de-escalation from Iranian proxies and reversal from what we've seen over the last few hours or the last couple of days. So that's where we're at now. Everything, if you want to go through the tweets, everything's updated there. There's a lot there, from the Iraqi army to the Islamic resistance in Iraq to Hezbollah and the weapons from Syria and the troops from Syria going Hezbollah. It's just across the board we've seen escalations, and it kind of adds on top of everything else we saw in the last few days. I genuinely, truly hope, and especially everyone for Lebanon right now, and obviously Gaza, if there's truce negotiations that go positively, at least proceed in the right direction, that could be the glimmer of hope that we'd be looking for. I still think it's hard to believe any truce deal will be reached. Will be reached soon, but I think it's more probable than ever, in my opinion. Fingers crossed. We'll see you in less than 12 hours. We'll be streaming, so about 9 hours. Barely going to get sleep. 10 hours. Now we'll be doing it we'll start like an hour before to analyze it, and then we'll start streaming. We'll be streaming a speech by Nasrallah. Tariq will be with us, and Hadi and others, Mark and others, to negotiate. To translate the speech and to analyze it, and it is going to be one of the more pivotal speeches in Middle Eastern politics in a pretty long time. So fingers crossed. Appreciate everyone joining and enjoying the debate at the end, but it's been a pretty intense space, one of the more intense spaces we've had. I appreciate the panel, and of course the co-hosts Tariq and Zev, and obviously Hadi, who's a regular co-host, and Faraz as well. And the panel, everyone that's on here, all the analysts that were on here before, and we've had a lot of voices, new voices today. So let us know your thoughts on everything in the comments, bottom right corner in that purple circle, and we'll see you again tomorrow, everyone. Have a good day, and fingers crossed. Bye.